Gary from Nerdrotic returns. Tom Konkle joins us once again on Midnight's Edge in the morning. Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is where you is. I'm Tom Connors. With me as always is the boss man, Andre. Good morning. Or afternoon.
Greetings, everyone. Good morning. Hope you're all good.
Hey, good morning.
Joining us is Tom Konkle. That's the voice you hear there. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's great to be on the show. I hope everyone had a good holiday.
Well, we hope you did as well, and welcome back to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you here, and we've got plenty of Hollywood stuff to talk about this morning. Isn't that right, Andre?
Yes, we do indeed. And before we get into any of it, I'd also like to say thank you to everyone that is joining us so far. Please hit like and help share the link, because YouTube doesn't necessarily always do that. And greetings to everyone that has joined us. I see we have quite an extensive and diverse crowd already. We have Mihon here. We have a Mexican Iron Man here that started off the day with a $15 super chat.
Wow.
Doing some promotion here, saying at 3 a.m. on Echo Base Network, we released a support video. Hail and thank you, Coach. And at 6 a.m. Loki Morning Show, we lit up the fires at Valhalla on an epic rant live stream by Loki.
Awesome.
So yeah, I imagine that's Star Wars related, which is something that we'll be talking about before
and I
long.
hope Mexican Iron Man's doing well. He was in the hospital recently, of course, as you may know. Hopefully you're doing well, sir, and you're recovering well recovering good, quickly, however you want to put it. Sorry, I can't talk this morning. I've been up for too many hours already.
You're already feeling it?
Yeah.
And PRRK for
Yes.
Pacific also says, I can get in legal trouble for posting anything to do with work online. I just don't understand why Lucasfilm tolerates employees disparaging fans. And yes, that is a great point. So with that, let us get into the first main topic of today, which is, of course, how Lucasfilm employees are taking to social media and to the internet to actively disparage fans and also to undercut what was achieved with the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian. Now, before we get into this any further, I would like to read a quote from renowned Disney insider who is called WDW Pro over at Pirates and Princesses. And he did a breakdown of the new roadmap going forward with basically how Jon Favreau, not Kathleen Kennedy, but Jon Favreau, is in charge of what's happening with Star Wars, or as per related to The Mandalorian, as we've broken down as well. And here is what he had to say. I shall read this quote because I think it's a very, very good one. Here's where Disney is going with all of this. They need Luke Skywalker to be back, redeemed, and the Jedi Master fans want him to be. Toy manufacturers need Luke Skywalker back. Marketing needs Luke Skywalker back. Game developers need Luke back. The only people who don't need Luke back are ideologically driven nut jobs who tried to fundamentally change Star Wars and the millennia-old concept of the hero's journey. Now, we have seen two of those ideologically driven nut jobs over the last week. For one, we had the editor, or one of the editors of StarWars.com, who went around all of the geek sites and told everyone that, no, don't get too excited, because this Luke you're seeing In his future is still Jake Skywalker, so don't get excited. That's kind of like what he was saying. That's a very nice job of undermining the excitement created. So he was evidently one of the ideologically driven nut jobs, to quote Pirates and Princesses here. And then more recently, we have Pablo Hidalgo of the Star Wars Story Group fame. So he is someone that's really high ranking within Lucasfilm, and obviously a firm member of the Kathleen Kennedy faction. And he disparaged Star Wars Theory, which is the single greatest Star Wars channel on YouTube, with almost 3 million subscribers, for having an emotional reaction. Now, that wasn't unique to him. If you look for Star Wars reactions, or rather Mandalorian finale reactions, that's quite a rabbit hole. And Pablo Hidalgo evidently isn't a fan of that, and made this clear on Twitter. Now, of course, those tweets are hidden and they're deleted and what have you not, but they're still documented by Ichibaka, for instance. So do check out his blog, Disney Star Wars is Dumb. So this is documented. He did that. This is a high-ranking member of Lucasfilm, actively disparaging the most active fans who are promoting Star Wars and undercutting what Jon Favreau is doing in the process. How can they be allowed to do this? What kind of company allows this? And so, Mr. Konkle, as someone who runs your own production company, how would you deal with an employee who did something like this in social media?
Well, to be honest, it's just bad for business. You would think, someone high up with Lucasfilm would want a fan to love Star Wars that much. I mean, it's pretty crazy that in this day and age we have to say that. But if this person worked for me, they would be fired and silenced as any sort of representative. You can only imagine, of course this was pre-social media, but when Lucasfilm was Lucas, you can only imagine someone going on talk shows from Lucasfilm, or a representative or an actor, and disparaging something that everyone loved. Like The Empire Strikes Back comes out and someone's like, it's not that good, you shouldn't watch it. I mean, it's just, it defies common sense. This guy, I actually know of him. I've watched his stuff. He even did a fan film that was really well made. The Star Wars Theory guy, who is he's the one who is crying, reacting because he has an emotional investment. What I think is astoundingly stupid is, here you have free advertising, free discussion of your production, of something that hopefully you were passionate about, undercut by a faction that absolutely hates Luke. That when a fan demonstrates any kind of affection for the character or emotional attachment, they undermine their feelings. I think it's ridiculous and unprofessional. Why make someone self-conscious about enjoying? If I did a movie and some guys put up a reaction that they were crying or into it, I'd be like, success. I've reached the people that this was made for. I would be ecstatic. And if anyone undercut it, they would be fired. I think he should be really dressed down by the company, and they should really take a look at the messaging that comes out of Lucasfilm, because I would argue it appears to be a civil war.
Indeed, and that's kind of like what we've been hearing as well, that there are two factions that are fighting it out. And it would appear that the Jon Favreau faction, and they are the ones that are in charge of The Mandalorian, and the whole universe that's been created, or rather pocket universe, because it's part of the Star Wars universe, that is being created around The Mandalorian, with the 3 spin-off series that have been announced so far, with Ahsoka, Rangers of the New Republic, and the Book of Boba Fett. Now, those are the 3 to begin with, and they are all, we have been told by our good friend and scooper Mikey Sutton, they're all building towards the big baddie Thrawn, and Son's novels about Heir to the Empire. So, spoiler alert, I guess. And this is something that's actually pretty interesting. And it's something that will get fans back to the franchise. But then you have the faction that destroyed, or arguably destroyed, Star Wars to begin with, and they are completely against this for ideological purposes. How can, if we disregard Lucas for a moment, how can a company like Disney tolerate to have basically a civil war within one of their divisions without coming down and saying that, okay, this side clearly brings in money and makes people happy, whereas this side was able to cut box office revenue in half over the course of 3 movies, let alone what they did to merchandise sales and the parks and all of those things. How can Disney not get involved?
Well, it's and their argument can't be very strong on the side that is undermining Star Wars, because you're seeing diminishing returns. You're seeing fans saying, no, we don't want the agenda-driven kind of political over character message that you have. And honestly, I find it, now that we're talking about it, it's ironic, isn't it, that the woke crowd, the crowd that claims to be progressive, is pulling out that, well, men shouldn't share emotions, and it's supposed to be a perceived weakness, when in fact it's a strength. That a man can feel comfortable to express himself or do whatever is not a sign of weakness, and yet they mock that. And to me, it's so disingenuous. It's when you get blinded by any kind of philosophy like that, it makes people do really stupid things, and it makes people react in not only bad for business ways, but actually cruel ways, because it's my way or no way is the attitude. And I think Disney needs to take a look at it and go, okay, are we in the business of entertaining the people that love what we're doing, or are we in the business of pushing an agenda going, no, you're not supposed to like it this way, you're supposed to like it the way we want you to like it? Because those two things are diametrically opposed. And until someone sorts out the messaging, which again I think is the vacuum in Lucasfilm used to be George Lucas, and then everyone else who decided by choice to work for him followed that vision. And now you have someone inheriting it who has watched Lucas build the car, doesn't like the car, but says, you know what, I'm going to be able to drive the car, so I'm going to drive it in the other direction because that's what I want. And then suddenly someone jumped in the driver's seat, like Favreau and Filoni, and said, we love the car and it doesn't drive that way. So now you have somebody grabbing the wheel and whipping it back and forth, and we're getting this kind of messaging where, Rian Johnson will be making fun of your Snoke theory, or you have this guy Pablo saying, don't share your emotions and don't do this and you shouldn't do that. And all that does is take all this free discussion, all the passion for your product, which Disney needs to look at, and basically undercuts it and makes you feel bad about liking what you like, which is the opposite of what good business is.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I'm not a fan of Star Wars theory. I hate to use the word, but he is a bit of a shell. And he is also somebody who is always jumping on the pro Disney train, which is fine for his image. And like Andre said, he is the biggest Star Wars YouTuber out there. You use the term greatest, and I know what you meant, Andre. I know you meant as, size wise, but
he's got millions.
No, and I'm not trying to shit on the guy. I think he's kind of whatever. I have no sympathy for him, but what I do see here is exactly what we've dealt with for the last few years, and I hope he's seeing that now, and he's somebody else who will change his tone. I mean, by Star Wars theory, because Pablo and Ryan, as you see here on screen, they've been antagonizing the fans for years. And when somebody has a critique about something, the first thing they do is call them an istophobe or a soy, or a crybaby in their basement, mom's basement, and all that kind of shit, and it gets old after a while. And here we have something where somebody who genuinely had a genuine reaction, because a lot of people had that same reaction. I didn't personally, but I was on the edge of my seat. I was riveted. I didn't cry, but I understand those who did, just as I understand those who weren't taken by it too. There's a lot of people who are just like, it's still not enough for me to get back on board, which is totally fair. But to have a guy like Pablo come out and say that kind of shit to somebody when they're enjoying this, especially when he's not the only one, he just picked him because he's the most well known.
Yeah, he's the most
he's
well known.
Sending a message through him. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's bad business. It's bad for someone progressive to mock a guy for expressing an emotion. If it was a genuine emotion, then that's the crappiest thing you can do, is like point at it and make fun of it or undercut it or whatever. Again, you just want to question who is running the ship there at Lucasfilm, that this kind of behavior is allowed, that this is encouraged, that the kind of undercutting, it's almost a miracle that anything good escapes.
You know what I would bet, though? That in a parallel universe somewhere where you have people being happy about seeing Rey, if you have like people watching The Force Awakens for the first time and they see Rey beating the hell out of a trained Jedi or trained Sith or what have you not, and beating the crap out of him the first time she holds a lightsaber, and you had like women crying with elation and like, oh, I feel so empowered. If someone had posted that, you can bet he wouldn't mind sharing those emotions. It's the emotions that he doesn't like, the ones that undercuts what he's been trying to achieve or helping Kathleen Kennedy to achieve, that are problematic.
Yeah. And that kind of myopic, singular view of it is exactly the problem. If you want to be inclusive and have all these different ideas and different things, well, oh no, only mine, only our point of view, only our messaging gets through. That is just the problem with one faction in Lucasfilm. And until that goes away, you're going to see the push-pull of, oh, something decent came out. People like it. People are starting to get it. We need to stop this thing right away. And it's like, that's just insane as far as a filmmaker and as somebody, if at my production company, if somebody came out and was like, oh God, don't like Tom's film, I would be livid. And not only that, I would question, how did I create a corporate environment where people who have access to the internet can represent it? They feel comfortable undercutting what I'm doing, and there is no repercussion for their employment.
Yeah, it's pretty astounding.
Yeah, it really is. And this, yes, it's the arts. You can have an opinion about it. You can like and not like, that's fine. But you stay silent on positive reaction to what you're doing. And I think that's the problem. It's why I hate Twitter a lot, is that Twitter allows any a-hole to put up their, 14 seconds of thought, and it becomes a dumping ground for not only bad ideas, but the kind of emotional bullying that's going on with this. It's like, there's no thought. It requires nothing of the person using it to sit and think about what they're doing or the repercussions. They just vomit it out on Twitter. And there really needs to be an examination of how social media, particularly in the entertainment business, should be handled by people whose job is to provide entertainment and entertain people through any media. Those people have a responsibility to not vomit out every single thought they have, positive or negative, about the people that buy the product. Can you imagine Chrysler releasing a new car and one of the designers going, I can't believe that people like this crappy car. Please stop posting yourself with the car. It would seem insane, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to hear what you guys have to think in the comments, and we have a couple of super chats where you have voiced some opinions already. Sontar says, and I can't show it on screen because that's gone from the chat, but luckily I have a copy here. But anyway, Sontar says, where was this mockery when Eric Butts went viral after crying watching the Rise of Skywalker trailer? This is the Kennedy faction coping, nothing more. And Mr. Tickletrunk sent us a super sticker of a little puppy. And Stephanie Jansiek's Smuggler, and I can't smuggler something, I can't see the rest here, sorry. But anyway, Stephanie Jansiek Smuggler says, Hidalgo's bio says he's retired. Well, if he is retired, he needs to stay retired properly. That's all I have to say about that. And Young Suvop sent a $2 super chat with no message, but thanks for the support anyway. And Spider Unlimited for $9.99 says, I don't know why Hollywood, especially DC, doesn't go by rule number 1. Less is more. Well, Star Wars has been doing that at least. There's something. And then Mr. Tickle Trunk says, for 10 Canadian dollars, thank you so much, if anyone wanted any more proof that Tom was right about Lucasfilm and that a faction inside will burn this to the ground because it was never about money, how much more proof do you need now?
Yeah. Well,
I'm assuming
the
he means
house
me
divided.
because I said the one bit. But
Yeah, he's referring to you.
I think Tom's absolutely right. I think we've been seeing this all along, where there's a group of people that love Star Wars that are trying to create Mandalorian and trying to kind of dig it out from where it ended up, and there's another group that I guess it's a human thing to want to do, wants to hang on to their jobs, their position, their messaging, but it's diametrically opposed, and they're being negatively reinforced by the reaction at the box office, by the fact that, I mean, look at the my mother bought a Baby Yoda jigsaw puzzle for herself, and she's 84 years old for Christmas. Now, she didn't buy any Rey or Finn products. In fact, she's like, I don't think I saw the last one of those, but she bought that. Now, if your reach is so powerful that you're reaching someone like that who is just enjoying it, even on a superficial level, you should be listening to those people, and you should be silencing the people that don't resonate. It's just basic. As a filmmaker, as a storyteller, it has always been my job to remain silent on people's opinion. It's none of my business what people think of me or my movie. I make it as good as I possibly can with what I have, but it would be absolute career suicide for me to start attacking people. Can you imagine if I spent my days going on Amazon Prime going, what do you mean you didn't like my movie? Or why are you liking my movie? It is unprofessional. And most importantly, it is indicative of a deep environmental and corporate problem with Lucasfilm at Disney. It's a huge problem. This is the kind of PR they say, no PR is bad PR. This is bad PR. And this kind of PR is exactly what they don't need right now as they dig themselves out. We all love Star Wars on some level, or we wouldn't be talking about it. But to have somebody who even if he doesn't work there anymore, decided to go ahead and go, ha, that's funny, you like Luke, that tells me that there's an entire group of people hired there that frankly don't like what they're doing.
Or rather, they don't like what they should be doing. I think that from their point of view, they are doing something else. From their point of view, I believe that they view it as their mission and their job to subvert Star Wars, to turn it to something else, to some ugly, disgusting tool, an ideological propaganda machinery. Because that is what Kathleen Kennedy hired them for. And so they view that as their job. And then here comes Favreau, and he hires really, really good people like Peyton Reed that directed the hell out of that final episode. And they actually bring Star Wars back from the brink. Yes. And that is what you would think that they would be happy about. But no, that undercuts their political messaging. And that, of course, is bad. And then they lash out.
They lash out like children. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And isn't it interesting? Peyton loved Star Wars, forever. And they give him an opportunity to do it. And suddenly the toxic fan base disappeared. Isn't that amazing? You create a few popular female characters, toxic fan base disappears. You create some characters that are likable, that have a little bit of development, that at least have some accessibility. Suddenly people are buying the product again. Suddenly they're enjoying collecting things. Suddenly there's interest. And all it is is rather than a toxic fan base, Star Wars has toxic employees.
Exactly. And it's those toxic employees, like true narcissists do, that project and call others what they themselves are. So they accuse all the fans of being istophobes and all of the things that they prove by action that they themselves are. That, at least, is my observation.
I think you're right. I think anyone that comes at a fan for either criticizing or liking something, like the Hidalgo guy, it's just a terrible thing to do. It's a bad business thing. And I would venture, if he is retired and they'd done it properly, he has to have a non-disclosure, non-compete, something legally where he's not supposed to do that.
Some non-disparage thing that's valid forever after, or something, or at least
I think you're
10
right,
years or something.
Yeah, if he's a disgruntled employee, the last thing you want is him to have access to the fan base. It's just stupid. It's bad for business. None of us should feel weird about expressing enjoyment of a particular thing that they created. That's just stupid and bad business, and I'm completely baffled why these two factions are allowed to continue to exist. Disney needs to sit them down and go, look. Let's look at the numbers, look at the reaction. People like Mandalorian, people like the universe that, Filoni and Favreau and all these talented people are building. You guys need to shut up.
And okay, I will say this because there's a few people who are losing their minds because I called Star Wars Theory a shill in the chat. I am so sorry. Evidently, he's got a few of his shills in here. The Jaw 15 says what I was getting at. Star Wars Theory never had this energy all these years when it was happening to others. From his vid, he gives off the air that this is new for them. That's my point. He has turned a blind eye to Lucasfilm pulling this shit for years, and now all of a sudden that it's happened to him. I don't have any sympathy for him, but I do feel like it's a message Pablo is sending through him to the rest of the fans who were happy about this. So, I feel like it is a really shitty thing for Pablo to do, whether he's still employed at Lucasfilm or not, whether he's retired or not, whatever I just think he is a complete moron. And this is the kind of thing that Disney really needs to stop. They really need to,
I agree. Yeah, whether he's a shill or not. Yeah, I mean, he could be a super fan. He obviously, there's nothing wrong with turning a passion into monetizing it and creating it on YouTube. That is where a lot of these channels exist. If we didn't have movies to talk about, which again is why that legislation to eliminate being able to stream stuff, which gives free advertisement again for entertainment companies. I feel like he's sitting there, whether he's monetizing it or not, whether he's shilling a little bit or not, clearly there is some passion for it. He's done fan films. I'm looking up stuff for him now. And it is just unbelievable that they would allow any of that kind of messaging to go out from an employee. And really, you're right. It maybe he turned a blind eye when it was happening to other people. It's a human thing to do, to kind of, once it happens to you, you're like, wait a minute, and maybe there's a little bit of that, or maybe he didn't want to rock the boat. But the bottom line is, boy, did they reveal their nature in a very large way to a huge fan of what they do. And this is exactly not what you want to have happen. A lot of YouTube channels exist to talk about, celebrate, and just simply exist because you have made something as a company, as a filmmaker, as whatever. The last thing you want is some person who, whether they're currently or in the past represented, to knock that person down, to make them feel weird about it, is just stupid, and it's counterproductive.
Exactly. And what I would say about Star Wars Theory is that in terms of creating a product that actually puts Star Wars in a good light and educates the masses on all the mythology and all of stuff that go with Star Wars, none are better than him. Like, he's my go-to guy if there's like something about Star Wars that I don't know, and that's a lot. because I didn't grow up with Star Wars, and I've never been a Star Wars fan per se. I've never claimed to be. If anything has made me that, it's The Mandalorian. But basically, he's my go-to guy for like reference material. And yeah, it's true. He hasn't been too vocal about how Lucasfilm has been treated fans up to this point. But all I would say is that right now he has experienced it. So I would just hope that he now takes a look and sees that everyone online that has been disparaged for being toxic and fan babies and all of that, right? They're just like him. They didn't do anything wrong. The only thing that they did was that rather than expressing elation over something really, really good, they expressed their frustration over something really, really bad. But it came from the same place, which was a love of the brand. And now he got basically ridiculed for showing his love for Star Wars. Well, that's what happened to anyone in the fandom menace, and for just the same, it's like the different focus thing. But this is one where the fans need to stick together. So I'm not glad that this happened to him. He didn't deserve it. But I hope that he will see that, this is a problem with Lucasfilm and how it has been run and still being run in the Kennedy faction. This is what they do. They go after their audience. And then there's no need for the audience to have squabbles in between ourselves. What we need to communicate very clearly is that this is not okay and shouldn't be necessary. Professionals don't act this way. And someone who does this, they can't work for a corporation like Disney. That should be the takeaway here.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think maybe this opens up a discussion for them internally. I can't imagine this is going to be ignored, but you need to decide, are we this company or are we that company? And they need to restructure the company to either they're in the pro Star Wars, where it's heading, or they're in the SJW messaging over story or over any reverence of the character. They need to decide where they are, because the two can't exist. They are diametrically opposed. And if you have someone who acts so entitled as someone like this Hidalgo guy, or is snarky to the fans like Rian Johnson, you have to go, look, if you're not liking the people that you're making this for, this maybe perhaps is not the job for you, and you need to go away.
Exactly. Or at least you don't have to like the audience. You can consider them a bunch of smelly plebs. But if you do, at least keep it to yourself.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You don't disparage the people that enjoy what you make. You're absolutely right. It's bad business in any industry, but particularly in Hollywood. I blame social media, of course, because it gives unprecedented access to both the people that make it, but also the people that make it have access to their fans. You wouldn't have seen this happen in the 50s or 60s. It's happening now, but we need a new kind of social etiquette for this, because it keeps getting out of hand. And the idea of using Twitter to attack someone or bully them or do whatever, or, disparage things in any way when you work for that company is just, it breaks all the protocols, and it needs to be addressed.
Indeed. Before we move on, I want to address with some more super chats, because we are a bit behind.
Can I just say something about this? Yeah, I'm
sure,
snarky,
sure.
But I'm generally not snarky to people unless they're snarky to me first. I'm just snarky about life in general. So, and I think Andre just keeps me around because I'm a little dead inside, and he likes that.
Yeah, everyone should be a little bit dead inside, the Norwegian way, like life's
That's
better
the Norwegian way, right?
Yeah,
it's a good philosophy.
Yeah. Don't be never be too energetic.
And then when I do say anything positive, everybody ignores it. So
yeah. I would make such a shitty Scientologist, always being so low on the tone scale.
You would confuse them. You'd say, "No, I'm fine," but wait, you're low. Wait,
fuck your thetans, leave me alone.
Yeah, I actually did like just for fun. I actually did like one of those tests once, like ages ago, and they were like confused because they're like, "Whoa, you're fine and you have no thetans or anything. You should be like an OT 10." And like, how come you're not like jumping around like Tom Cruise? How come you're so dead inside? I said, well, that's why.
Tom Cruise case in point. Yeah, before you know, there's a delay enough to where I think they said that before you did.
Yeah, Tom would not have made a good Viking. That's for sure.
No, absolutely.
You get a little too excited about the raping and pillaging. I say.
Yeah, that's right. Like, take it down to 10. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. As I said, let's go through what you guys have to say in some super chats. Young Suop says, Lucasfilm needs to hurry up and fire Pablo immediately and give Star Wars theory a public apology. Well, I have to say, he's not the only one that deserves a public apology, because he's gotten off really lightly compared to anyone that voiced a negative opinion as opposed to a positive one. But other than that, yeah, I agree that some firings would absolutely be in place. And Club Star Wars feels the same thing, saying, fire Pablo, hire Star Wars theory. Job done.
There you go. That's the ultimate revenge.
Yeah, he's really passionate about this.
It's so strange. Wouldn't you? You would want to have fans to have this type of reaction, wouldn't you? I cannot fathom how he's like, oh, this guy liked it, I better shut him down. You know, it's crazy.
Well, I mean, I look at it this way. Like, I mean, yeah, I can be a dick, but I mean, if I turned around and was like a dick to one of our biggest fans on YouTube, like who promoted us, which, I mean, I'm trying to think of who that could be offhand, but you know, like, if I would be in public, I'm sure Andre wouldn't appreciate that very much.
No, well, rightfully so. Yeah. Tom, I'm sure you guys are great as a business, and what you do is express your passion. Can you imagine if some of the regular people that come into the room, you just suddenly start railing on them for contributing to your show? I'm sure one of you would look at the other and go, what are we doing with this? You know, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'm sure Tom can relay stories of where I have intervened in like social media wobbles before. So,
well, and that was with people who really didn't matter. But so, like, yeah, I know you would. Hold me to a fire if it was like somebody who actually did. So, and I don't mean like general people don't matter, but I just mean like idiots who are just trying to get a rise out of me, basically. Yeah, that's what I mean.
What is it? Exactly. Haters make you famous.
Yeah. Yeah, you just got to rise above stuff like that. It's like, it's that simple. And this is the same thing.
Andre doesn't understand that I feed off that. Like I love to be a little troll. Like, and that's what my little haters don't get.
Yeah, but you can't do that as a representative of.
I know that's the problem, and I'm good at it.
Oh, I get it. I've got it as an actor my whole life. I sometimes will go and read, you know, people can get insulting about your name or your physical appearance or whatever. And I read it for fun. I just laugh when someone comments like, oh, there's Tom with, you know, something, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say something about me physically or something, you know, I can't do anything about. And I just laugh because I'm like, you know what? I took this job. I'm going to, you know, take whatever criticism. Some people, if you believe the bad stuff, then you believe the good stuff and whatever. So I just don't believe any of it. I just do what I love to do. And you put it out there. Every company should have that philosophy. And if YouTube's going to thrive and have a place where people can talk about film and what they love, then the last thing you should do is shut it down. You shouldn't be telling them they can't stream clips of a movie. You can't show. You can't react to it. All those things are just counterproductive and frankly stupid.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Yeah, I also see that Paulus Plain, a countryman of mine who sent 50 Norwegian krona. Tom, can you put that back on screen? What he was saying? Yeah, saying Elon Musk would fire the F immediately for that. Yeah, and he's not the only one.
And see, there's a company run by one person with a vision, you know, the way Lucasfilm used to be.
Indeed. And and of course, here's a good one. Says Tom Connors equals one of the hardest working YouTubers out there. Oh, this is true. I can personally vouch for that because I'm the one that makes him work that hard.
But I whine about it. I know that. I own it. I own it.
Yeah, and you'll be whining a whole lot more when we get
Tell
to the
me,
next
I was
retrospective.
whining before the show.
Oh yeah, and Willow Y13 says for is that
I'm not sure
for
what that is.
for $5 from somewhere. I have to look it up exactly where from. Says Mauler, Andre, and Critical Drinker should be writing scripts for Star Wars and DCEU. Ivan Ortega should be editing. Then we'd have good films again. Yeah, you could do worse. Although in my case, I would probably be better at editing them than writing them from scratch, since I don't know Star Wars. But yeah, I could certainly do. But I could do a better job than many of those that have been writing them so far.
That's true. How ironic you find YouTube is where you find some talent for people that could do that. You know, that somebody like Mahler, I've seen his deconstructions of things, and he has a really in-depth understanding of what works and doesn't work in a story, and he's a great kind of bellwether as to what's working in a movie, or you know, if you've lost the thread on a narrative, he can deconstruct it beautifully. And, you know, again, Critical Drinker, I've been a fan of for years, listening to his stuff, and he understands story. That, for me, those people talking about something that I made is not only a compliment to have, you know, Andre take an interest in something I'm doing. That is necessary in today's market for a light to get shown on all the things that are screaming for attention. You know, that are trying to get. You want talented people or people with real insight to be talking about what you're making. You don't want to shut that down, and you don't want to say, no, I don't want you to like this, I want you to like that. You go in the direction that the fans lead you.
I like this one too. Mihan says, send Tom to troll to deal with Pablo. He will rip Pablo a new hole to fart out the door from Disney, and then he says some gibberish here.
Yeah, that gibberish is Swedish. He says, vi är alla lite döda inombords, which basically means we're all a little bit dead inside.
I would do that, but he has his little profile all like shut off for me, and somebody already said they were going to go get him. Uncle Ethan. Never mind. Anyway,
I might have to get some friends at Lucasfilm to go after him. That would
the person I just sneezed about will take very good care of him, and he's the ultimate troll. So
there you go.
Yeah. But anyway, let's do a couple of more super chats to get.
I think we missed
up with this. Yeah, we have missed a few in there, so we'll try to get caught up with that before we move on to the next main topic of today. But before then, Mike Ayers said, "If you didn't know, it was just announced yesterday that Lucasfilm is hiring a new social media manager."
Interesting.
God, I hope it was the Favreau faction that hired him.
I do too. It's like, talk about fixing the barn door after the horses left. Yeah, we'll see about that.
Yeah. And Mr. Tickletrunk says, for those of you who don't know who Pablo Hidalgo is, he is the creative executive at Lucasfilms, and he hates 90% of the fans. Oh, that's pretty astounding.
Yeah.
And Young Suop says, we need to retcon the sequels and fire Pablo. I'm pretty sure that there are many who feel that way. And there the rest of them disappeared on screen for me, but I have them all here at my own end, so no worries. We'll do a couple of more before we move on to the next main topic. Let's see then. Just give me a second to get caught up here.
While you're looking,
I got it. But yeah, Tom, in the meantime, carry on.
Oh, I was just gonna vamp while you were looking, but go ahead if you got them.
Yeah, I got them. Says, "Hi, gents. Berating people for something they love and ruining one of the greatest moments the fandom has had, driven by jealousy." Yeah, pretty astounding. And Pathfinder says, "The importance of Luke is larger than just for the Star Wars franchise. He is a modern mythological centerpiece. The game around him goes deep." While Jorge Burgos Jr. says, "Remember Chuck Wendig got fired for Twitter." And he shouldn't be the last one. While Stephen Otten says, "Time to clean house at Lucasfilm. Put Favreau in charge and be done with it." Roof Korean 92 says, "Time to let go the rotten apples at Lucasfilm. Those intent on snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Vindictiveness is not the way." And with that, I believe we have caught up with sufficient for now. We are not fully caught up. We'll get to the rest of you later on. But for right now, let's move on to the next main topic of the day, which is HBO Max and AT&T and Legendary Pictures, who are quarreling about AT&T's decision to release all of their movies straight to HBO Max, most notably Dune and Kong vs. Godzilla. The most recent thing that we heard is that Dune might be getting an exclusive theatrical window anyway. We'll see how that works out. And that they are saying that, okay, so if you want to release Kong versus Godzilla in theaters or straight to HBO Max, you can do that, but then we want $250 million in an extra fee for it. Now, when you hear
Which I think
that,
is more than what they paid for it.
I think so too. But when you hear that, when you hear these news, what's your initial thoughts as a filmmaker yourself, Mr. Tom Konkle?
You know what? It does. It opens the literal Pandora's box, because here's the problem: when you have made a movie and you've put up a budget for it and you want to make it. I've done this with streaming people. When they come back and assign a cap on what they think it's going to make, or if you need to recover that money and you're lowballed by them, you're not going to see any more money beyond whatever they pay to acquire it, because there, of course, creative accounting comes in. That happens at the box office, but the box office has a unlimited capacity versus simply licensing something. As a filmmaker, what I get concerned about is if the first point of contact is someone going, okay, we're going to put your film on a streaming service that people subscribe to. They're not really buying a ticket for yours specifically, but, we'll throw yours in with the pile and we'll tell you, kind of proportionally what it made compared to everything else. That screws everyone over, because what happens is the performance of that film is what is the basis for everyone down to the lowest part of the talent end, what they get paid. So unless a streamer is willing to spend $250 million, $300 million every time out of the gate to make a really big budget, effects driven film, they're going to go bankrupt really fast, because those films were made hoping for the home run, or at least, getting around the bases to the point where you might make 2 times, 3 times your money back. You can't turn around and make big, ambitious films and sell them to a streaming service that goes, hey, great job, we'll give you $150 million. It's like, but I spent 200. Well, we can't do anything for you. How are you going to continue to foster a large canvas when the place that it ends up is always a very quantified place for money? You can't make a big, ambitious film hoping, this film's really good. Can you imagine if they had proportionally done this with the Marvel franchise? Like, you know what? We'll start Iron Man. We don't have big expectations for, so we'll go ahead and give you $70 million. And then by the time you get to Endgame, we'll give you 300 to 400 millions generous, when those were billion-dollar money makers that people saw. The danger with something that Legendary is looking at is usually when you have a production company, only a small portion of the money is put up by Warner Brothers. So the rest of it, you have to go to a bank, you have to go to investors, you have to get someone to put up the rest of the money against what you think the movie will make. But if veto power rests with someone like Warner Brothers, who puts a small portion, say a third of the money is coming from them, but they have absolute veto power on taking the movie anywhere else that could pay you. In other words, if you have the movie and it turns out really great and you're like, hey, I want it on multiple platforms, I want to try and make as much money as I can with it, and people see it and they go, no, we paid a third, but we still have the right to say you must put it with us. It's the death of anything in an open market or a free market. And every filmmaker, every artist is scratching their head right now going, do I risk it with someone like Warner Brothers? Do we go to HBO Max and just take what they give us up front and that's it? And that's a very dangerous place to be when you're looking at making big, ambitious films. What that does is it throttles down the original investment, because someone will go, well, what if we only ever make 250 million tops? I'll only give you 100 million because I want to make double my money back. So now you're going to see a constriction of the budget up front because they don't know they're going to make that money back.
Yeah, that's what I think is going to happen going forward. Constriction of budget up front, that there's not going to be any movies that have budgets anywhere near what Dune or Kong versus Godzilla has, because they don't know that there's going to be a market to put them in. But in terms of this particular thing, how do you think that AT&T and Warner can respond to this? If Legendary says, fine, you can put it there, but then we want 250 million. Now, granted, I don't know the details of the contracts and what the different parties can and cannot do, and exactly what has been threatened if they don't get their way. But for instance, could Warner possibly say that, you know what, fine, then we're not paying this and we'll put it in theaters exactly as was planned, and then it can bomb there, and that'll be your loss. But will it? Who would that hurt more, Warner and AT&T or Legendary?
I think you'd have both people. It would hurt. It's never a good thing when something that so many people work on to put forward on, behind the scenes, and also the creative, but also marketing and all that, to have it flop is it's a resounding failure on all sides. I think what you would have to do, what I would do, say I'm negotiating a contract to be distributed, I would put in a performance clause. And I would require absolute transparency, where if out of the gate you saw a substantial, 20% of all subscribers or new subscriptions were for my film, I would say, okay, initially you're acquiring it for this amount of money, but if we meet these certain performance standards, you're going to have to pay more, just how it would if it was in a theater. And let's say it's a runaway hit. Maybe, what if Godzilla versus Kong is a really good movie, and in theaters it would have made 800 million? Well, at some point you have to go back to the streamer and go, well, you have a monopoly on my film. It's the only place people can see it. You're not telling me how many people are seeing it or how much it's moving the needle as far as subscribers. So I want complete transparency. I want the kind of box office reporting that you would have if it was released theatrically. And I'd say, you know what, if it makes 400, 500 million, at some point, everybody from top down to the lowliest person getting residuals needs to participate in that. This is not the fact that the business changed is not a time for you to do a money grab where you give us 250 and then you go ahead and hang on to 100% of 700 million. Who wants to make a film if you're never going to see any profit? And yes, that happens in box office all the time. Distributors screw you over all the time. I've been screwed over from people where I'm like, well, it's everywhere. How is it not making any money? But at least there's the hope that you could swing for it, hit it, and you would become more profitable. And you know what that means? You get to make more movies.
Indeed, movies should be a for-profit business, which is something that everyone needs to keep in mind, especially Lucasfilm. But
yeah, exactly.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah, how much would you wager if you knew the house in Vegas would put a cap on how much you could win, no matter how much you put in?
Exactly. Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
a very good point.
this is a really kind of messed up situation because you have, the situation where, okay, I think HBO going back to Dune is kind of playing ball with Legendary, but they're doing it in a way, and we brought this up I think last week, Andre, where we both agreed it was basically HBO going, all right, fine, we'll throw your movie out in theaters. You ain't gonna make shit, but we'll throw your movie out in theaters. And so they agreed to do that. And I think Legendary seen the folly in that. And so that's why they came back to the table and said, oh, yeah, by the way, we want $250 million for Godzilla versus Kong. Because they already kind of see that that's not going to be profitable for them. There's no way they're going to make their money back. And if Legendary is the one who's the primary financial holder of this, they're the ones who are going to lose out the most. So, I mean, I see it, I see it both ways. I see Warner, AT&T is playing some hardball here. Do I agree with them? Yes and no. Like, we're in a situation right now where I see, as AT&T can see, there's no money in sending anything to the theaters right now, especially any movie that costs them well over $100-200 million to make. They're not going to make their money back. Wonder Woman just proved that. It'll be lucky to limp across anywhere near $200 million when it's all said and done. And that's completely worldwide. And that's just simply because it's closed.
Yeah, it's night and day from the first one. Yeah.
So, like, I think HBO is, I don't know if they're doing Legendary a favor per se, but I mean, Legendary, if HBO offers them anything in this situation, I would be willing to take it. Maybe they were going to offer them some kind of points on the other end. Who knows? Maybe they'll sit down and factor and figure like they did with Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot on, we kind of just rough guesstimated they gave her $10 million because they probably just figured the movie was going to make $1 billion and they called it a day just to make sure the two big women involved weren't going to go to the press and freak the fuck out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why. So I hope that every other man that is going to get screwed over when their movie is dumped straight on HBO Max and they get none of the bonus that they were thinking. I hope that they will rejoice in, oh well, but we got what we fought for, which was that they got their 10 million while we got nothing. So yeah.
I think, too, what it is, Andre, you have a background in business and finance. These conversations should have happened before the announcement or the decision that it was made. You sit down with your key providers in any business that are providing what keeps your business going, which in this case is movies or television shows. You sit down and work out all of this, right, before you announce that all the films are, so that everybody understands the contract they had before. That's not going to be the contract now. The world has changed, and you make them happy. You make everyone feel like they won, but financially, it has to make sense. It has to be something where each person isn't going, well, I read about my film coming out today in a streaming service. I thought I was making a movie. That is just terrible business. It's terrible procedure. All of this stuff could have happened in September or October before we even knew it. They should have talked to Legendary and go, look, here's what we're thinking about doing. How can we make this work? Instead of it playing out in the public forum where it's like, oh, really? You're going to release it that way? Well, we're going to ask for this. It's like, you mean you're just now talking about how much money you want for a movie that's already done? That is the death of any business relationship where someone on both sides feels like they're getting screwed.
Indeed. It probably could have been handled better.
Yeah, but and the order of it. The order of it needed to be handled different. I can only imagine. I've had this happen with a distributor where you find out their plan after you've agreed to it. After you do it, they're like, well, yeah, we're not going to do that. We said we were going to do this. We're going to do that. Well, that sours it so quickly that everything good that happens is always overshadowed by the fact that you started so poorly with what you're doing.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like surprised that Legendary went this route that they did instead of asking for money for Dune and not insisting that Godzilla go to theaters, because Dune, they have no idea how that's going to play.
Right.
I mean, we've talked back and forth on how that could possibly go, but we do already have a good idea of how Godzilla versus Kong is going to go. We know the first two Godzilla movies did okay. Kong did okay. And as I've pointed out a few times here, what was that?
Kong did great. The
Yeah.
Skull Island one did great.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, they already kind of know where they're going to hit the box office if it was a regular, situation. So I could see where I just can't understand why Legendary would get behind Dune going to theaters and not Godzilla more so, because that's going to probably put more butts in the seats. And I've noticed that I think the last Godzilla movie is selling a lot better than it did in theaters, because even though it didn't do as well in theaters, it's constantly at Walmart. And if you know anything about Walmart, they move their inventory quickly out of there. That movie's almost a year and a half, 2 years old now.
That's
it's
right.
still there. Like, if it's
absolutely.
selling well, then
That's called
that's
long
why
tail
they keep
theory.
it there. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, the long tail theory is it can sit on the shelf and make more money than its initial release in physical media and streaming. All that's great. But the problem is, out of the gate, the promotion and the way that these things are coming out already have a negative spin, already have a bad taste in everyone's mouth about how it was presented. If you sign something, you're like, hey, I'm making a big movie that's coming out in movie theaters, and I'm hoping to make 600 million, and then to turn around and get ready to deliver it and find out, they just said they're going to release it streaming, and I don't really know what I'm going to make on it. That is just crazy as a way of doing distribution for a big studio with those kind of price tags. It's insane. It's like, okay, so if they say no to them for 250 million for that, what's the amount? And at what point, how many subscribers do you need? How much of a loss leader is HBO Max going to be if every acquisition of a studio film is more than 300 million? How long are they going to stay in business releasing 10 movies, each costing them $300 million? They're not going to have any money to make anything else. And Andre can back me up on this. If Legendary's holding the note on the majority of the budget, can you imagine the interest payments that they're making until that film gets released? They're astronomical. This is borrowed money.
Well, we already have an idea because we know what Bond is costing MGM every month, and it's in the same league. So I would guess it's somewhere in that $1 million a month range.
That's crazy. Yeah,
I know, right? That's money you're not getting back in your pocket. That's another $3 million you got to make at the box office to cover. And again, and this is what I've said from the beginning: is theaters are needed by the studios, but the studios feel like they don't need the theaters. And the only way HBO Max can make this thing profitable, and that's what they're doing. This is a going all in, life or death situation here, because they were near the bottom of the rung of the barrel a couple weeks ago, as I've brought up many, many times. And all these moves they're making have, as much as we talked about the pandemic, they have nothing to do with the pandemic and more so to do with pushing HBO Max. And Legendary and all these other people are finally starting to catch on to that, even though I was saying it, 2 months ago, Andre?
Yeah, pretty much. You've been very consistent about that message.
Yes. And here's the thing with this is I got to sit down and think, like, okay, how many subscribers do you need at $15 a month to cover this?
Yes, exactly.
Even if you sit down and figure this is the only thing being paid for, right? Let's just ignore the hundreds of other things that go up every month, right? That are brand new and what have you. Just this alone, if you figure, and that's where I've sat down and figured, you need at least X amount. Like, okay, if they got to make 250 million at $15 a pop, take away 5 for whatever it costs you for your servers and all that kind of stuff. So let's go and even 10 to make it easier.
Yeah,
that means they got to have 250 million subscribers to basically profit off this.
Yeah, and those people have choices. They have other streaming services. They have other places they want to spend their money. Maybe the bigger question we should be asking here is, can a streaming service like this, with this base, support the kind of movies they're offering now? Will it sustain beyond the ones that were made thinking they were going to be released in theaters? Can this continue, or will we see just a giant constriction where if the first point that stuff is coming out is a streaming service, what you're going to see is smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, because you cannot offer what they claim to be offering. If they do this year, next year after that, it can't be the same thing. You can't keep making these big movies, and you can't keep adding 60 million more subscribers, 60 more subscribers. It's not even available outside of the US.
I mean, it's slowly becoming available in a few other places. Is it over there yet, Andre? I know they were supposed to be. That was one of the markets that was supposed to be opening up in, was over in Norway, right?
Yeah, in Norway or in the Nordic in general, what's going to happen is that is that HBO Nordic is going to be
Yes.
converted into HBO Max. But that's here, and here they're lucky where they can do that. That's not the case everywhere. So the international rollout for HBO Max, that's going to be it's going to be a long process, and especially in terms of content, because so much of the content it's basically elsewhere. It's on Netflix and stuff like that due to prior agreements.
Exactly. Yeah. And Pat Elvis says physical media is making a comeback. I should have kept my Betamax tapes. I don't know about that. But definitely hang on to your DVDs and Blu-rays.
Yeah, hang on to those Blu-rays.
We've always said here, even if you got to put them in storage somewhere for a while or what have you, you're not going to regret it, because I'm already hearing of a lot of things that have had little lines clipped, little scenes clipped. The list is growing ever daily, and it's beyond Disney now. I even heard of a few things on HBO Max that have been clipped. Not to mention that those famous 5 episodes of South Park are still not available, even though everybody tried to argue with me and say they were. I said, no, they're not, because they won't put them on any streaming service.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Physical media, remember, is the reason why companies started restoring their film libraries in the 80s and 90s, as they realized there was money to be made, but also a restoration. For Christmas, one of the things I got was, George Pal's War of the Worlds. And they did a 4K. Oh, it's great. It's a 4K. It's the first time they transferred it from the Technicolor negative. It looks like it was shot yesterday. Ben Burt did the sound mix on it, on the Criterion version of this. And it's amazing. The only way that can survive is having a release on physical media, because if anyone could just throw up any kind of master on a streaming service, there's no incentive to maintain it the way there is with physical media, because the license will expire and it'll disappear from your service. Well, who's to say something like HBO Max doesn't release all these big films, then yank them, then make you wait for them, and then they might put them back up again, and they keep doing this kind of back and forth. You don't know that you have those movies. Everything's temporary. Everything on your library, somebody can come along and just pull right off your shelf anytime the license expires, or if the producer decides they don't want you to have it.
Or they want to change something.
They change and do a revisionist version, and then that's it. That's the only definitive version, is a streaming version. It's very dangerous, and it goes back to before there was physical media. You had to kind of watch it in the theater and remember it, and that's how you remembered it. You didn't have access to it. We're heading that way. Streaming, everything's available, but everything's also very fluid. It can be changed. It can go away.
Yeah, and not just that. I mean, they're learning already just from the days of the updating of when they were doing masters for DVD, that everything's out of date, and everything was out of date just recently for 4K again.
You're right.
Because I think I heard a rumor that they have to possibly redo The Godfather, because even though that was one of the first movies scanned in 4K, it may not have been done correctly.
That would not surprise me in the slightest, because every kind of remaster is unique.
Sorry.
No, that's how it is. Like it takes a while to get used to the new technology and see what you can do, and then you have your ways of doing it that you think is going to work. But then you see, oh wow, okay, if we do it this way, it's going to be so much better. I mean, just look at video games. Compared the games that come out at the beginning of a console's life cycle compared to the ones at the end of it, the difference is going to be pretty staggering.
And what you're going to have now, though, getting to my final point on that, is a lot less movies are going to be remastered.
Yes.
We've already got, and I'm not just talking about, like the silent age movies that have been lost, and some of the other films throughout the years have been lost, but there's going to be movies that were possibly upgraded for DVD and VHS that will never, ever, ever get an HD scan.
Yes.
It's not there's no interest in them, or not enough money to be put towards them, or they may not even have the original negatives.
It was a boom time when people could own a movie. That was new. There was never a time before that. It was always a mental rental because you would go to the movie theater and watch the movie, and you were required to remember what you experienced. You might go back to the movie a few times and start memorizing it, but you didn't physically own it. Like when I was growing up, it's like, can you imagine if you could own the original Star Wars in 1977. You would watch the hell out of it, and it would have made a ton. We had this sort of rebirth of people looking at their vaults, looking at their libraries, and going, "What can we plumb the depths of?" You could find all these great little gems that you could buy and own, and someone bothered to remaster them, because if you run the numbers, it made sense that you'd make enough money with a DVD that, yeah, let's go ahead and let's remaster Meatballs and see what happens. But now the everything is becoming temporary again. Everything is the illusion. You're basically renting it over and over and over again, because you're paying a subscription on a streaming service that may or may not keep what you want. Yeah. And it's great for the studios, because they can charge you all over again every time you watch it, or you're paying a subscription to watch it, versus I buy it once on disc, I own it for as long as I want it.
Yep. Yeah. And I was gonna get back to that one, but I was just gonna say, actually, Mike's not gonna probably have to wait too long for Freaked. I have heard from the grapevine that Alex Winter is possibly working on a 4K version of that, so stay tuned. But yeah, this is a great question for Tom here.
Oh yeah.
And after that, we'll get into some more super chats. But I can read the question for those that are listening and not watching, and I know that. Magi Web Design says, Tom Konkle, have you considered making 3D films for the niche 3D market? They love physical discs, and your films would stand out since there's few 3D releases.
It's funny. I started a company called Luminactus, and the first thing that we did was this kind of Adult Swim style 3D television show. We were the first live action 3D television show ever. It won we did a bunch of 3D film festivals and stuff. And the whole reason I came out with it was to differentiate my stuff from everyone else's. It was this thing called Safety Geeks, SVI. And it was a fun show. It basically was about a safety team that was the most dangerous team in history. They would investigate industrial accidents and make everything worse. And I used 3D to kind of make the cartoon type violence and action and the comedy even more pronounced. And I ended up shooting it stereoscopically, all on green screens and doing things like that. And we did try that niche. The problem was, as I prepared to sell it to the various channels, there was at one time a 3D channel in the UK, and there was going to be a bunch of channels here. They all disappeared as 3D channels, and the 3D market for televisions, the bottom dropped out. I would, consider anything that could make the film stand out, and I appreciate you saying it. But I think, unfortunately, for 3D, it is a technology-driven presentation, and it's so much harder to find 3D TVs and 3D players. I'd have to really think about what my price point. Safety Geeks SVI is out on Blu-ray 3D now. I still have that out, but the technology is not there to show it for many people. So unfortunately, I tried it, and for me it didn't work.
Yeah, and with that, let's get into some of the super chats. These are from when we were talking about Star Wars, so many of them are of course about that. Madison Blake says, how is Star Wars Theory a shill? He's made his opinion known that he dislikes The Last Jedi. He is not the shill. Yeah, Tom walked that one back already. And Mr. Tickletrunk says, at first they came for the fandom menace, and I said nothing. Then they came for Star Wars Theory. United, we save modern myths. Divided, it falls. So true. And the Sardos says, for $50, thank you so much. That really helps keep the lights on around here. And he says, keep speaking against the pompous and arrogant Hollywood and the media complex. We are at a cultural crossroads, and only the truth should prevail in such times. Indeed. And Master Clockwork says, as much as one might hate the evil corpos, it might be time for Disney to follow the AT&T model. Profit over ideology. Yeah. And Madison Blake says for $10, thank you so much, because he likes some things from the sequels and just loves Star Wars in general means he's a shill. Yeah, okay. Star Wars Theory clearly has made his dislike known. Yeah, again, Tom, walk that one back. And Bogue says, Mexican Iron Man, are you actually advocating for Twitter censorship right now? No memes. Yeah, I have no idea what that's about, but I'm sure you can figure that out between yourselves. And Stephen Otten says, excuse the typo. I was typing without my glasses. Well, that's all right. I fixed it in reading.
Yeah. No.
Ruben Losa says, again, Tom, Star Wars Theory is not a shill. He is critical of the new trilogy. He was critical of Solo. He just doesn't take the low road very often. Difference.
But yet there's a lot of people who are agreeing with me in the chat. So again, potato, I guess. And maybe Script Doctor has a feeling on the matter.
There he is.
Hi, how's it going, everybody? Sorry I'm late.
Good to see
Your
you.
excuse better be a lot of snow. I'm kidding, of course. I had to shovel snow this morning, so I'm mad at it.
You know what? And that's not the thing. The fact that Star Wars Theory guy, whether he is a little bit of a shill or let's be honest, this is a business doing things on YouTube. He's monetized his passion for Star Wars. The bigger problem is the toxic employees and the fact that you have a company that's sending the wrong message to people that love what they're doing. It's a head scratcher, and it's baffling to me that anyone would attack a positive reaction from a place that they work or have worked, because both are a violation of any kind of a business ethic, but also it's counterproductive. You want people to love what you're doing so that you can do more of it.
I agree with that. It sounds to me like if someone's going to criticize a fan for their reaction, it's probably because that fan likes an idea that they protested earlier, and their ego is getting in the way.
Yeah, I agree. And the problem is if you have a civil war going on inside of Lucasfilm, then you're constantly going to see people going, don't encourage them. It makes them want to do more. So they'll be undercutting it. Meanwhile, they want to produce stories and productions that the audience isn't resonating with, and they're shaking their fist at them going, don't you know this is good for you? Don't you know you should like this? We're going to jam this down your throat. And it smacks of I was just telling Andre and Tom just before the show, it's like it's the exact playbook when Star Trek 3 came out and they immediately announced, hey, we're making a Star Trek 4. This thing's going crazy. It's great. It's doing great. I know, don't, pay no attention to the fact that nobody's watching this thing because it must be doing good. We know something you don't. Well, already they've announced Wonder Woman 3 several days after this movie came out. And the only reason they're doing that is so that anyone that reads about it goes, oh, well, I must have heard wrong. It must be doing really well. They're doing a third one. It's like, no, that's the shill game. That's the whole PR game that every studio plays. Meanwhile, Lucasfilm finds people that love Mandalorian and says, hey, don't show your emotions. We're progressive. Men don't cry. Men don't show what they want. It's like, are you kidding me? It is an unforced error, as they say.
Yeah, I agree, because you have to be, in the industry, for those that may not know, you have to be cautious whenever they're putting a brand new film or television show in production, and then they say, oh, it's such a hit, we're doing 2 more movies, or we're doing a 4-season order. That's a head scratcher. It's like it hasn't even been vetted by the audience yet. How could you get invested in this? And the biggest one that I can think of, especially within the fantasy and superhero genre, was Green Lantern. They were trying to put in production the sequel while they were only halfway finished filming the first one. And I was like, no, that's doomed. That's a doomed film. For one, you're not focusing all your attention on the movie that you're working on now to make it the best it can be. And 2, you're betting on something you have no data on to be successful, other than the fact that it fits a genre that is successful. Like, that's only one variable. You need way more than that. Like, even a Ryan Reynolds cast at that point was still kind of iffy at that time.
Yeah, talk about a leap. Yeah, it's just crazy. And I just saw someone in the chat, bless you. If you're crying and watching Mandalorian, that's exactly what the team wanted to do. There's nothing wrong with it. I was watching it with somebody who was bawling, and she's like, I can't watch this again for a while, because they love the character and they love what happened, and they, that's what you want. Why would you make something and then deride someone for enjoying it? Makes no sense to me. And like you said, Script, it's like also the leap of like, wait for feedback. Or if you're not so sure about your production, don't use bravado to say no, it's gonna be great, it's gonna be, you're wrong if you don't like it, because that sets up a dynamic that you fail every time.
Well, yeah, you can actually go back to quoting, oddly enough, Return of the Jedi. Luke Skywalker says, "Your overconfidence is your weakness," and that's very true when it comes to Hollywood.
That's
like,
great.
you need to be overconfident a little bit just to get the first deal done, but you can't be overconfident with your audience because you never know what you're going to get out of them. And what I've been slowly, like subtly doing on Twitter and on YouTube and stuff is promoting, like, yes, please love the fact that you got a Luke Skywalker you finally wanted to see, but don't settle for it. Like, encourage the Mandalorian guys to go further to get us the whole picture of Luke, get us like him and doing like teaching students and philosophy and being the role model that we need, as aside of just being an action staple that you could recreate with your action figure, because that's all well and said and fun, but it's not what made us fall in love with Luke beforehand. Like, we loved Luke before he drew out lightsaber and started slaughtering those robots. So we need to go back to that type of character so that we can love him and really relish in him again. Otherwise, all we're going to get is scenes of Luke and Ahsoka and all those others just mowing down and chopping up robots. And as fans, they deserve more than that from their characters.
I agree. And yeah, it's a beloved character. We love him because he's part of the mythology. And seeing someone treat that character with respect is going to engender emotions, especially if you grew up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just silly to say that a guy can't get emotionally invested or cry or do something. It's like, are you kidding me?
That's called a victory.
Yeah. It's called a victory, and it's called, guys are allowed to get emotional about stuff. It's stupid. And this is coming from the progressive wing of Lucasfilm.
Yeah, I love that. You made the point of that. These are the guys who are going out there trying to say that, men need to be less misogynist and more. Yeah.
But don't you dare cry or show emotion. Yeah.
If anything, it's really, I mean, given the I guess image of what a man should be, when a man does show emotion, that usually means something, because it's important for them to show that emotion. Like, that's why I always find it's funny where you have, like, the guy who's with the beautiful girl and he tries to give her no mind. It's like, dude, you're doing the opposite thing you want to do. Like, granted, you don't want to be kissing her feet all the time, but you want to at least show her some courtesy and stuff when you're in public. And that's how you get, that's how you convince people that there's a love story. And I'll put it this way, there is in television rarely ever a well executed love story that can elicit emotion out of like guys or girls. And
true,
it's always just kind of like flat face, like the girl's head over heels for the guy and the guy's too cool for school or something. And you're like, no, that's not believable. But you show a situation where a father is going to rescue his kid and he hugs him and cries, and it's like, yeah, that's something that's justified, and that shows that they're a human being. And when it's done honestly, it really resonates. And it's when it's done to placate, audiences pick up. And you can go back to Wonder Woman for that, where that end scene with Pedro Pascal, so many P's going on today, with his kid. It's like, I wanted to believe that, but I couldn't, because they completely cut all the guts out of what that relationship was for the film.
Yeah. Well, I've had a problem for a while with, I think, a lot of people in Hollywood, a lot of people in my business have a fundamental misunderstanding of masculinity, or that there's a feminization of masculinity, that somehow masculinity cannot incorporate a very broad spectrum of being a man's man and liking things that you like as a guy, and it's okay, it's not toxic. But also, men are not robots. I mean, if you look at a movie like Gladiator, you look at it and the guy cries when he loses his wife and kid. You don't look at him and go, oh, what a wimp. You look at him and you're like, these are deep feeling things. Often in a relationship, it's the guy that's hung up on the girl and is more emotional and wants to move things forward or whatever. And you never see that represented in a rom-com. It's always the guy, is above it all and you don't feel anything. But in real life, I think we've all been crushed by a woman, or we've all felt something where you just wanted to ball up and cry because, you feel things more deeply and you often repress them It's not in a man's nature to, complain and whine, do all these things all the time. But when it really does hit you, as you said, it means something. And if you're telling a story and you can bring a person, an audience into a man's head, a masculine character, a man, and feel what it would take to make that man cry, to make him break down, to really reveal what he feels, that's good writing, that's good storytelling, and other men will resonate with it, because we might be uncomfortable talking about it, but in the end, we are human beings. And I think masculinity needs to be addressed differently. We've feminized masculinity, but also I think we deride men from being able to fully embrace the spectrum as if somehow it's a weakness, and it's not a weakness. Masculinity is something to be celebrated, and women love masculine men.
And the same rules apply to femininity too. It's also about strength and emotion and the conviction, and that's what makes them role models. When we see something like that perverts that, it really bothers me, because it's like, I don't think you understand. You're oversimplifying something about human beings, and human beings are anything but simple.
Yes, I agree. There's a moment in Aliens where Cameron cuts to Sigourney Weaver's face, and you can see the moment she decides that mama instinct kicks in. She's like, I'm going back into this fiery place that is going to be nuked, and I'm going to go get her back. And that moment that flashes across her face before she decides to go back in and get her, that is everything that's strong about, that's Mama Bear going after her cub. And that perfectly captures it.
And it's not even just a personal thing. It's like they both need each other at this point in their lives. And that's what makes it so
that's good writing.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's character development, it's writing, it's making somebody human.
Yeah. Do we have any more super chats, Andre, before we get into the next bit?
We do indeed. So let's try to get caught up before we move on to the next topic. Let's see where we was. Just give me 1 second, and I will be here. Almost there. I just have to find it again. Yeah.
No, I was going to say before, since everybody says I'm such a hater and a whiner, I did see probably one of the greatest probably the greatest movie of last year. Fat Man. If you've not seen it yet, do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
It's amazing balls.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Good call. That if you haven't seen that movie, go watch it. You're right, Tom.
Yeah. And with that, I have found exactly where we were with the super chats. The Jaw 15 said, Star Wars Theory never had this energy all these years when it was happening to others. From his vid, he gives off the air that this is new for them.
We covered that.
We covered that before.
Yeah.
Alexa Serra says, can these people just get a job in politics and get publicly humiliated? Perseus the Cat, I believe we said this one before, but it's so good that it's worth repeating. Communicating with the public is a daily part of my job. My online presence is always monitored. If I bad-mouthed a product or customer, I would be gone.
Yeah.
No second chances. How is Lucasfilm so different? Yeah, indeed.
Well, unfortunately, I think there's people at the very top that approve of the kind of fan shaming that's been going on.
Yeah, and I mean, I know there's the divisiveness. I know there's a lot of people who are, it doesn't matter what happens, they're not going to forgive Disney, and that's completely fair, and that's their prerogative. And the same side is there's those who are, moved by Luke, just like Star Wars Theory, and they may not be saying necessarily that this is fixing anything, but it's a step in the right direction. And of course, there is also a group of people who are just like, woohoo, and, everything's fixed and better now. So again, I understand everybody's reaction to this, and they're all justified. And in the end, it's really just more so how you decide to celebrate it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's face it, if I may, it's been a crappy year. And if one show can make a guy feel decent or happy or feel a positive emotion for, 20 minutes, what's wrong with that? It's been a lousy year. You have something like this drop where you're like, you know what? That was positive. It was something that was enjoyable. This guy liked it. Why on earth would anyone want to crap on that? The real world is bad enough right now. It's amazing to me that any message would come from a former employee or current employee that would make fun of it. It's like, that's the point of entertainment, is to forget about your freaking problems in real life for a period of time. You can lose yourself in another world with other characters that you like. That's the point.
That's one of the points. The other point is maybe it will inspire you after watching such a movie to maybe do something to change your life for the better. That's that's the victory lap, I like to call.
Yes, that's why we tell stories. That's why you're a scriptwriter, is that you want someone to see themselves or see themselves improve themselves through your story. We're all telling these myths and these morality plays and things to shine a light on something. And hey, maybe I can do better. Maybe I can do this. Maybe there is hope.
And not in a way that pontificates or preaches, but just like, hey, this character had a tough situation. They figured out a goal that they wanted to achieve, and they made sure that they went as far as they could to try and achieve it. And that's kind of the message that you do in stories. It's like, yeah, when things get rough, you kind of have to persevere. And that's really the basic message that's going to be in a film.
Yes, I agree. It goes back to, sitting around a campfire in primitive times and imparting some of the wisdom that you had to the rest of your tribe. That's a story. And it's nothing more than that, but it's primal, and it's needed by any polite society. Any civilized society has its stories and its myths, and you have to celebrate those. And you, hopefully, if they're decent, you learn from them.
Exactly. A simple story of don't eat those berries, and if you attack a saber tooth, have a buddy. Just don't do it. You have to go a little bit more elaborate.
No,
I want to read that script, actually.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to get to before, is even if we didn't like the Star Wars films that have been coming out in the last few years, we didn't go out of our way to attack anybody who did. It's
what's
not
the point? Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have negative bias in our brains. Our brains remember that there's a tiger behind a bush and that you're going to get eaten, because if you don't remember that, that's the last memory you're going to have. So we have negative bias in our stories because we want our protagonist or our antagonist to be interesting and be up against some kind of problems, overcoming things, and we remember them. And that's what the whole point of getting in the entertainment business. It's why I became a filmmaker. Is if one person was touched by something I did, or laughed, or I just had a moment where they're like, you know what, I forgot about all the crap I'm dealing with today, and I watched your thing or I listened to it, I'm happy. It's why I perform. It's why I make films. I don't do it for me. I do it because hopefully someone else agrees with me and goes, yeah, I liked that. I thought it was good. I forgot about things for a little while. That's the whole point. I would never, ever tell someone they were right or wrong to like something that I did.
Indeed. And with that, we have a really, really telling super chat right here. Will Hickman says, Lucasfilm executives will mock a cancer survivor and then say that the fans are why Star Wars isn't great. The Star Wars theory criticism is fair, though, but Hidalgo, for F's sake, LOL. Yeah, indeed, that's a very good point. Yeah, no, because I don't know too much about Star Wars theory, but he is apparently a cancer survivor.
Oh my god!
So yeah, Hidalgo mocked a cancer survivor for getting enjoyment out of seeing Luke Skywalker. Good going, Hidalgo. Good going.
Yeah, if he is a cancer survivor, it's like even more. It's like he's got plenty to deal with in real life. Let the man cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, good going, Hidalgo. Lucasfilm, seriously, you need to do something about this. And then KitKat says, for 20 British pounds, thank you so much. They aren't rational anymore. The desperate attempts to subvert Star Wars and Star Trek fail, and the toxic employees are going insane with frustration. Expect more and wilder hysteria. And then he follows up with a live long and prosper symbol. So yeah, there you go. And Phil Moore says, Star Wars theory is silly, willy, shilly, billy. Well, opinions are divided on the subject. Mills says, for 35 South African runs, so donkey. Star Trek fans warned Star Wars fans this was going to happen. And
Yeah.
now there are questions. IFNCBS have a viable franchise in the future. No, if they have a viable franchise in the future. Yeah, there you go. You have the same people that work their magic on Star Trek are right now working their magic on Star Wars, and yeah, that didn't work out too well for either franchise, did it?
True.
And they're on Lord of the Rings right now, so yeah, yay! Look forward to that. So that might be money well spent for Amazon. And Mihan sends 50 Swedish krona saying, saw Star Wars at the age of 5. Been a mediocre fan since. Seeing Luke back was what I wanted to see in episode 8. This way behaving from the top is bad. Yeah, it is indeed. Mycket dåligt. Chris Patterson says, if Disney does end up using elements of the Thrawn trilogy going forward, I wonder if they're going to stiff Timothy Zahn on his book royalties too. That wouldn't surprise me. Or maybe they'd make an exception for him.
I was going to say, I think some other authors have already come out and said they haven't seen royalties. I don't know if Zahn was one of them. I'd have to check into that. But I know the Toxic Femme ladies were keeping up with that business.
I tell you, writers get stiffed all the time. We like in animation, when I was doing the Scooby-Doo show, I was the staff writer. You don't even get residuals for the show. You get stiffed every time.
Yeah. It's really terrible. Even if you're the staff writer, you get the full credit on the script. You still
it's animation. Yeah. It's like you don't see any residuals. Yeah.
I would like to, or at least I hope, though, that under Favreau that might be different, because from the Marvel side of things, they have, at least to the extent of my awareness, done right by their writers.
Yes.
Like, for instance, when they did Guardians of the Galaxy, like Rocket Raccoon was created by, I believe it was Bill Mantlo. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Bill Mantlo, and he was in an accident, and he's been essentially bedridden for decades since then. But they were still able to organize a private screening for him when Rocket Raccoon was in Guardians of the Galaxy, and help with some of his medical expenses and stuff like that. And of course, there are things to criticize, but I do hope that with Favreau on board, with the Marvel guys, that maybe they will treat the writers differently than what Lucasfilm did under Kennedy. And for those that haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out our interview with Alan Dean Foster, the one who came forward with how he was stiffed by Disney. Well, we spoke with him for 2 hours about that and everything else, including what he felt about The Last Jedi and how they had handled the Star Wars sequel trilogy. So be sure to check that interview out. It's on the channel. And after that shameless self-plug, let's move on with the super chats. Theodore McCarthy says, subverting Star Wars wasn't their goal. Subverting society was. Star Wars was just being used as a vehicle for their ideologies. Pablo Hidalgo certainly makes that believable.
Yeah.
And Silver Nova says, I will always have Star Wars in my heart, having been a fan since '79. But as long as Kathleen and her acolytes are still involved, I will have apprehension. All the cancer must be removed. While X Morbius says, I love to be a little troll. Oh my God, I'm among my people. This was in reference to what Tom said earlier. Yeah.
Poor Tom's never going to live this down now.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't try.
And Mihon also, yeah, he had that one already. And 70s rock fan says, I'm a corporate vet. Once worked for a huge corporation where all the executives thought they were gods, only cared about fighting or internal power, ignored the customers. Result, the company imploded big time. There you go.
Yeah.
And Mark C says, love Tom and Mecca. I want them there, but I think we need an old-fashioned high council this week. Hail, Jeff, Jeremy, and Ethan.
I don't know about this week, but I do know that Jeff was trying to work something out at some point to get the old council together. I have no idea when or what the circumstances are right now, so I can't say. But yeah, I don't know. It's always a plausibility.
Yeah, there you go. And Mihon also says for 20 Swedish krona, Warner Brothers buys the same movie twice for streaming. And Mills for 35 South African Rand says, is there an antitrust case with streamers as there was with the old Paramount consent decree before that was scrapped? Tom, are you familiar with this?
You know, I don't think the legislation that kept the antitrust with movie theaters, I don't believe that there has been new legislation to incorporate these kinds of platforms. I don't think, and I think there should be a hard look at how much of a monopoly and how much you can own the means of distribution on a streaming platform. If that's the primary, and say you have Disney owning Hulu and Disney owning Disney Plus, at some point you're going to have to look and go, is this a free market or have we created a monopoly? I don't think there is enough look at the intellectual property angle or even the technology profile. I don't believe the legal end has caught up with it, and it probably does need to be looked at.
Yeah, I would agree. There definitely needs to be a second and third window distribution model for streaming so that other people can watch the content and also avoid monopoly if the certain streaming service is either unaffordable or unavailable in a certain area.
Yeah. And yeah, if you think about it as an artist, if you're negotiating and there's nowhere else to go because they own everything, that gives them an unfair competitive advantage. You can't take your work anywhere else. Basically, they set the market and they can undercut everything that you do because where else are you going to go?
Yeah, like there's no bidding war, and that's the fun when you get lucky enough to have something so good that other companies want to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have very few places and very few choices where you can go, that is going to cause a huge problem when you try and in the free marketplace of ideas take something out and it's like, well, if Disney says no, that means you can't take it the other 5 places either.
Indeed. Before we move on with the super chats, because we have a few more to get through, but Tom, did we have another topic for today that we can get to in the meantime?
Well, we could just touch real quick on the whole announcement of Wonder Woman 3 already over the weekend. What was it, a day after Wonder Woman 2 dropped and 2 days after? Yeah, interesting news. I don't know how Patty's going to have time to do that and a Star Wars movie by 2023, but what do you gentlemen think about that? Tom, let's start with you.
You know what? I think it's the old playbook of regardless of how it does, the perception of prosperity is, well, it must be good. It must be doing well if they're doing a third one. And I have to wonder, you had just mentioned about, I think Andre said something where paying them off, at the beginning, it's like, look, we'll assume it was $1 billion movie. I have to wonder if part of that payoff was the guarantee of a picture of another picture deal to do the next one, and that they said, look, a couple of days after it rolls out, we want you to announce that we're doing a third one, and that may have been part of the package to keep them quiet and happy, because someone like Patty may have thought, well, even if people didn't like my movie, they've already paid by the time they don't like it. So if it had made 700 million and half of them were angry customers, it's still 700 million. It's not going to make buying it for 250 on the streaming. That might have been part of the deal, is to keep them happy and to keep them quiet. They're like, look, we'll definitely give you another film and we'll pay you off, but we're sorry that we turned around and changed the deal on you.
Yeah, I mean, I was the first thing I said when I sent it to Andre, I'm like, oh boy, this smells like CBS All Access.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's that whole thing of it must be great because they're doing a third one. So it kind of it becomes the story rather than what people thought about it. But also, I have a feeling it was yet again negotiations after they already announced they were doing it. Everyone got pissed off, and then Warner Brothers had to go, "Oh, okay. Well, what can we do to make you happy?"
Well, I already heard. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Tom.
I was gonna say I already heard a weird rumor about Wonder Woman 3. I heard they're going to use Flashpoint to bring Steve back permanently.
Oh boy, no. Well, see, I remember reading an article I think over the summer where Patty Jenkins had doubts she'd ever make a Wonder Woman 3, given the difficulty and the climate of film right now.
I think it's all posturing. I really do. I think that this is just to sell HBO Max. What do you think, Andre? Because I think you're in the same boat.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this reminds me of the summer of 2016. Because just before Star Trek Beyond was about to open, they went ahead and they announced Star Trek 4 with great fanfare that was going to reunite Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pine as father and son, respectively, through some universe traversing shenanigans that no one really cared about other than the people at Bad Robot. Anyway, they announced it with fanfare, and here we are now more than 4 years later, and where's the movie? Still vaporware, nowhere to be seen, because Star Trek Beyond, as good as it was, it kind of flopped big time.
You got to read this.
Yeah, exactly. And Disruptive Innovators. Star Trek Discovery Season 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all totally greenlit.
CBS promises.
Which, of course, means the first ones must have been great.
Yeah. And I will just say again, as we've been saying for years now, where is the Section 31 series that was announced now, 2 years ago? Where is it? Yeah. Announcing is cheap. Following through is another thing. And Tom, you brought up that Patty Jenkins, in addition to this, she's lined up to direct another Star Wars movie. But there's another thing, because recently it was announced that Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot would reunite for Cleopatra. So that's now 3 high-profile movies. And if Patty Jenkins is going to do all of these 3 movies one after another, that's going to take at least 6 years.
Yeah, probably basically 2 years.
Yeah, it's going to be 2 to 3 years for each movie. So one of these isn't going to happen. And from what I'm seeing so far, people aren't liking Wonder Woman 1984. We covered that in a roundtable, and we certainly didn't like it.
No, I haven't met too many people who have. And there have been some people who have. And to be totally fair, a lot of those people have been like, yeah, I totally understand why people don't like it. But I like it because it's just so cheesy and fun. And that's cool. I mean, like, there was aspects of it I liked, but there was way more shit about it I didn't like. And I know the first thing you said to me, Script, after you watched it was worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's true. I don't have any relationship with the screenwriter other than the fact that I've read much of his work, and it's not good. He is kind of like a discount follow-up writer to some of the original ones that, like, he's doing the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, which means they couldn't get the original writers for Spider-Verse because they're probably too expensive. So they go with him. He also did the sequel to Zombieland, which, if you saw it, you probably forgot about it because nobody talked about that sequel. And that came out before the pandemic. And
in other words, we should pretty much write off the animated Spider-Verse Part 2 right now.
You're going to have to write off the animated Spider-Verse, Mortal Kombat, Shang-Chi, America, the motion picture, because that's the worst.
He wrote Mortal Kombat 2?
He's writing the Mortal Kombat remake, which I'm pretty sure is just an earlier draft of Shang-Chi with the names changed.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what he's like personally. I think he's probably a fine guy, but he just does not deliver. He wrote the video game adaptation of Doom. And he also helped write with Stallone on The Expendables, but he was never brought back for any of the sequels. And that's usually a big significant point of interest, because Stallone, when he finds a writer he likes, he kind of sticks with them. So
Yeah, especially if he trusts you to write something and he's not doing it, or he's
Yeah.
just co-writing or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that he wasn't able to be brought back to work on the following Expendables, and he's not involved in the comic book adaptation, that's not a pleasant relationship between the two from on the optics side of things. So yeah, like I think we're going to see, just pay attention to that writer's name and take a look at their track record. I think it's more this writer's inability to create the best cohesive story, and that's why I don't hold Patty Jenkins entirely responsible for Wonder Woman. I think she got whipped up in the emotions that were present in the script, but just couldn't see the forest for the trees. And if they have a different writer for Wonder Woman 3, which I'm pretty sure they're going to, I think that will have more likely be developed and shown as opposed to, say, a Rogue Squadron, because statistically, Patty Jenkins might not make it to the finish line for that film.
I'm really bummed to hear about Mortal Kombat. I was looking forward to that movie.
It could be good, but I mean, the track record of the screenwriter is not promising, sadly.
Yeah, so basically you're saying don't get my hopes up. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the best part. If you go into it with low expectations and it ends up being great, you still win. So, and everybody else does too.
Like Simon Smith series. Here's my Mortal Kombat script narrator. Mortal Kombat, they fight. There you go. That's all you got to do.
No. To a point, yeah.
Pretty much just stick with kind of what they did in the first film. I mean, that did pretty well.
The first film it did well. It was a simple story. You got Christopher Lambert, which made that movie kind of for me.
Just look at the Scorpion animated movie. That was fantastic. Like, go with the script for that, and you're golden.
And that, or yeah, like I said, because I mean, I remember watching that first movie. That's one of the few superhero, Jesus,
video game.
I'm about to say comic book, then video game movies to actually be successful, in my opinion. Not just financially, but to actually capture the story. Up until we got Sonic, if you don't count some of the horror films. But I was never a fan of like Resident Evil and stuff like that. So, really, I mean, it's not that difficult. But then again, they screwed it up themselves with the sequel back in the day, so I can't,
They did, and like Doom, like the video game Doom of like escape from Mars by killing a bunch of hell demons, like that should be an easy premise, and it has some decent lore to the video game, and it was screwed up. Like The Rock could not save that film.
Yeah, I mean, when you don't have a fundamental understanding of what makes something good, it's tough, and it sounds like, if he's a workman like writer, he probably has a great agent who keeps getting him these cherry projects. We call it falling upward here in Hollywood. It's like you move from one thing to the next like a locust, and then you get hired for the next thing, and it's like, well, that didn't do well, let's hire this guy again.
Yeah, but like notice the frequency too. That's the other part. When you see that many projects so tightly together, it really means that they hit the ground running because they know they don't have a long career ahead of them.
Yeah, exactly. They gobbled up everything they could, probably off a spec script and some other, relationships, and all of a sudden you got 5 great projects.
Yeah, and in this case, I think he's at 7.
Yeah.
I was like,
7
whoa,
crazy. Yeah, I would jump at that, but I don't blame
me too.
him.
But it's like,
yeah, yeah. Well, and with a director like Patty Jenkins, I acted for her in something, and like I think it was 2004. She directed an episode. It was her first TV directing thing. Was Arrested Development. It was an episode called The One Where They Build the House.
Yep.
And most of my scenes got cut. I played a Bluth board member in that, and there was an entire subplot. And she was wonderful. Like when she has a great script, she was giggling and laughing, and she was so supportive of the acting. She seems like one of these people that her authorship happens at the directing level, not the writing level. Like when she loves the script and she's executing that, she's a terrific artist, terrific director. She was so, I will never forget. I didn't know who she was. I'd heard she'd done Monster, and I didn't know who she was. By the end of it, we're chatting by the trucks and doing all this stuff, and she's just a fan of what she's doing. She loves doing it. I think the problem is, when you see an artist grow like that, and it's like, look, Patty, what do you want to do? The whole train set's yours to play on. She jumps in on a very big, ambitious story like Wonder Woman. You start writing it. Maybe her gift is directing, and she needs to find terrific scripts that she can execute. You have to find out what your limitations are and work within them. And this might be, hopefully, it's a wake-up call. Maybe she's like, you know what? The writing part of it isn't my passion, or isn't really where my finesse is. I need to find a terrific script and do something with that. And I hope that happens with Rogue Squadron or, Wonder Woman 3. but maybe that's, a limitation. Maybe writing's not her forte.
My big question is, what the hell did she do for 10 years besides direct a couple TV shows? Why the hell did she dip out of the spotlight? Like, I can't believe she wouldn't have been able to have her choice of whatever film she wanted to direct after Monster. I'd like to know what happened. I mean, I'm not
Deals
going
are
to
weird in Hollywood. Deals
Yeah,
are very weird. Like
I get
sometimes
that,
you might get
but-
shopped around and pulled into a whole bunch of projects that just go belly up due to lack of financing, or maybe there's a contention with regards to the rights of a project. I've never heard anything bad about Patty Jenkins other than the fact that she's a fun director. Like,
Yeah, I love her. Yeah.
and the other part too is I think what has happened, especially when she took on the endeavor of Wonder Woman, is that I don't think she was given the proper team to help her understand and learn how to do these types of movies. Like, because she nails like the chemistry aspect of things between her actors. I've never seen a director that's been so confident with being able to get the right emotions out of like the male and female leads and convey those emotional parts. Especially like in Wonder Woman itself, like that first one, the charm that Chris Pine, like she just gets the right take from Chris Pine to
she and
work
Chris
with.
are very tight. They did I Am the Night together.
Yep.
They have great rapport. I mean, it's like when a director finds somebody that's their muse and they move forward with that person, and she does bring out great performances. I actually think I wouldn't even say languished. She just did a lot of television for 10 years. I know she did have a baby, she was pregnant, so she wanted to raise her kid. So she spent a decade directing television, but she tried to even do, if I'm not mistaken, she wanted to do a thing on Chuck Yeager, a thing of his life. She tried to do a bunch of projects. Wasn't she up to direct Thor Dark World back in?
Yep. She left because of creative differences, I think.
Yeah, so she probably struggled with it, but to her credit, she put her family first for a little while and raised her kid and directed some TV, and now she probably can move forward because the kid's more self-sufficient, and she's finding her limitations and finding what she can do. Is she a writer? Is she a director? Is she both? I think she's going to be someone to watch.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But she was just directing television during the television golden era, really. And I think that would probably that's what benefit her career, is the fact that in the early aughts and early 2010s, television was where it's at that time. And she was smart to get in there because, you work for 8 to 10 days, and then you go back home, and that's an easy thing to do, especially if you're a parent. And I know a lot of directors that male and female that have had kids that said, TV during that time was the best, and now today TV is all weird. Like, they don't know what's going on, and neither do I.
No one knows anything. But I think she honed her craft quietly for a decade in television after doing, Monster was her calling card.
I think I know who's, after what you said about Chris Pine and how well they work together. I think I know who's going to be Mark Anthony in the Cleopatra movie starring Gal Gadot.
I can imagine that happening. She's like, look, deal with it. Yeah.
I don't think that Warner would be very difficult to convince, or Sony. It's Sony that's doing that movie. Anyway, I don't think that they would be very difficult to convince at all.
Honestly, the only thing in Wonder Woman 84 I thought was good was their chemistry. Now, I'm not saying there's a whole convoluted way they brought him back and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about just their chemistry, period. But going back to video games, Simon says here, Bob Hoskins' Mario Brothers was on the money for me. You're not going to get any arguments from me and Andre. We unapologetically love that film.
Oh, absolutely. It's not a great Super Mario Bros. Adaptation, but it's a great cyberpunk movie, and we don't have enough cyberpunk movies. So
Agreed.
No, we love it for all the wrong reasons, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. That's exactly what we do. All right.
Are there any more super chats to catch up with?
Yeah, we have a few more super chats. So let's get into those. Black Lotus 30 said, will this also mean that actors' salary will go down with streaming, since studio will want their movies to cost less, so movies won't have box office? Mr. Konkle.
Yes, it absolutely will. Somebody's quote or somebody's price was always based on their performance in a theatrical, theater release. So there will be a ton of renegotiation as to what the to use an old movie term, marquee value, which now the marquee is your television. What the marquee value is, you will see prices go down. Now, it's still a great living and you still do it, but you won't see the kind of superstar status particularly for people coming up, because it's a lot harder to quantify how a subscription base is affected by a person versus an individual project.
Yeah, there you go. Script Doctor, do you have anything to add to that?
Other than the fact that for the last 7 years, I've heard nothing but producers chomping at the bit to get rid of these high expensive actors and film properties so that they can get back to making movies that are low budget with a high profit return. So one of the reasons why I think we haven't heard a lot from some of the bigger producers regarding this change in direction to the streaming services is because they're all for it. I mean, we've only really heard from a handful that object to Dune and Tenet and whatnot having a theatrical run, and I think that's very telling of where the industry is going as a result.
Very true. One of the reasons, when I was acting, there was always that hope that you'd get in a project that would take off and your quote would go way up and you could do it. And I'm a character guy. I make my living acting, and it'll be interesting to see how level the playing field gets, where you don't see this huge disparity between the one person who's in the movie versus everyone else in the cast. Maybe that level playing field will be a good thing, because you'll be able to make more movies because you're not front loading something with, a $21 million payoff to one person.
Yeah, there you go. And moving on from that, Blue Marvel says practical effects are going to have a resurgence.
Well, they kind of already are with the Mandalorian.
Yeah, Mandalorian's really started that, and I think you're right. I think there's something about a practical effect that your brain knows it's happening, and it's an art and a craft that was almost lost. I'm really pleased to see it come back, and I hope we can foster more of that as long as it's economical to do so.
Yeah. And Thunderstorm says, National Socialist Soviet Politburo streaming services. Correct thinking for you. There's some people we have spoken about today that certainly subscribes to that. And Mihon has something to say to you, Script Doctor. Yay, Script Doc. Love your character studies.
Oh, well, thank you. I've got more on the way. It's just the last week has been both busy and inspirational. So I've been writing up a storm, and then real life has been getting in the way. So things are a little delayed, but don't worry. I'm going to have more in the future. 2021 is going to be a good year, hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. And Paulus Plain sent us 100 Norwegian krona, tusen takk. I cried at the night of the Iron Maiden gig for the family dog that passed away. And while we are on the subject of Scandinavia, Mihon also sent another 20 Swedish krona saying, Tom, the truth don't make Tom the troll cry.
No, not usually.
Sounds like
Not
a future meme.
I mean, I've pretty much dealt with all the worst things people could say to me, so bring it on.
Tom thrives on that. And Thunderstorm. Yeah, Tom?
I said, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. And Thunderstorm says for $9.99, thank you. It amazes me that people believe these communist, globalist, socialist monopolies are going to allow creative entertainment without total control over the products to fit 1984 newspeak. Well, they still like to earn money, so that's where you can vote with your wallet. So there's that. Yes. And KitKat says, what really gets to the audience is men who obviously want to cry, but get a grip on themselves and don't cry. And Ironcaster says, Iron Mask was another great movie to recommend. Felt like an 80s family action film throwback. Jackie Chan and Arnold Schwarzenegger stole the film. This is a movie
Was
that
that the one that
I.
came out last year? I think actually
Isn't
didn't
that-
it, script?
Yeah, is that the Chinese movie?
Is that
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think it came out last year, but just the same. I don't know if it came out here yet at all.
Yeah,
Has it?
that's-
Okay.
I haven't seen that
This-
one yet, but I know of it.
Yes, it
Well-
was a Russian movie. I've heard of it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's Russian. Okay. Yeah.
That's right.
It sounds like a job for Surfshark.
Yeah, it's something that you would. Yeah, it's definitely something you'd like, Andre. I remember seeing the trailer.
I hear
Okay.
it's insane. Yeah.
I'll be sure to put Surfshark to work and check it out.
There you go.
And so can you. Just like find the massive Star Wars video we have with 500,000 views. There's you have the link to Surfshark VPN and description of what it can do. Check in with or check out with the
go to
code Midnight.
Surfshark and type in midnight as a code.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And the Festman 93 says, making fun of fans. Is this legal, my lord? Well, not only is it legal, it appears to be actively encouraged because doing and far worse than making fun of fans. And Dead Cell 79 says, the emotional response to seeing Luke wasn't just our attachment to him, but it highlights the level of damage this new trilogy did to many of us. It certainly did. And Fun says, can we all cancel our Disney Plus memberships on January 4th to send a message? Cancel or hashtag cancel Pablo's membership.
Well, if you want to, that's your call. We don't encourage anybody to cancel or do any of that. In fact, we aren't even encouraging you, and we should have said this up front, to go after Pablo in any way.
No, absolutely. And we do not encourage that. And also, just after Disney actually did a really good move with The Mandalorian season 2, I don't think that right now is the time to cancel the Disney Plus subscription. Right now is when you want to encourage them and say, this is the way to do it. You are on the way path. So instead, send some angry tweets, but don't go after Pablo himself. No one has said that.
Get that
He
meme of
locked
"I'm a
the
Jedi."
comment.
Get that "I'm a Jedi" meme and tweet that at Disney Plus. The Luke Skywalker. That's because that will send them the message. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you do it. That's
Yeah,
how
it's
you
wrong
do
to
it.
cancel. Canceling right now sends the wrong message because they did something in the right direction. And if we cancel, the bean counters will be like, see, we did this and they canceled and drop it. They'll get the completely wrong message.
Exactly. So right now is when you want to keep your Disney Plus subscription.
Yeah. Encourage.
You may even convince someone to get it just if they promise that they're going to watch the entirety of Mandalorian back to back, and only that would
I've been
also
hearing-
send a really good message.
I've been hearing Soul's pretty good too. I haven't watched it myself, but Peg Raisler, and I think I'm saying the name right because I actually had a kid in my class who had that last name, says the first Cleopatra was a bomb. Well, technically that was the second Cleopatra you're talking about, but I'm just being a nerd right now.
It wasn't even that. They made like 50
It was like a
of them or
third, but
something.
the original one, the original big budget one was lost years ago. But the one with what's her name, Elizabeth Taylor, it actually wasn't so much of a bomb as it just cost so much. It's funny because I did a documentary about the fall and the rise and fall of Hollywood, and kind of before I got on a Midnight's Edge, and I was kind of mirroring what was going on and coming up in Hollywood as to what was going on at that same time period as Cleopatra, and that's what you had was a shit ton of over bloated films that weren't bringing in anybody in the theaters, like big, huge, massive films like Cleopatra and what was some of the other big ones at that time that didn't do that well? Some other big musicals. I'm trying to think. Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah, Dr. Little, Around the World in 80 Days.
Around the World in 80 Days. Yeah, there was a couple other big ones that just really kind of like, and they were
tone deaf. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they got to a point where they brought in guys like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese and all those guys to start making decent films. It all changed everything.
Yeah, I remember Oliver and all those things came out, and it was so out of touch with what people wanted that the studios, Cleopatra pretty much changed Hollywood in one way. I mean, we wouldn't have Century City as a city if not for Cleopatra. They literally had to sell all the property that 20th Century Fox had to avoid being bankrupt. And so I think back then the budget was, Tom, you can correct me, was it close to 40 million back then?
For Cleopatra, I want to say it actually creeped higher than that.
Yeah, which
And I
would be
wanna
like
say
200 million now. Yeah.
Well, like even with worse than that, I think with inflation, I think it was. I'm trying to remember because I read a story about it a while back, and
They had to sell everything. That's why
it was like
Century
300 or
City
400
exists.
million, I think, with inflation.
And it's so tone deaf. If you look at movies from that period, what they were producing was not what people wanted. And if they had social media, they'd be shaking their fist at the kid. Hey, kids, how come you don't like this? You're wrong. It's interesting how it goes through cycles. Maybe we're going through that right now, where the alignment between what people want to see and what the studios think is good for us there's a disparity.
Pretty big one too.
Yeah.
And moving on, Stuart Shield says for $10, thank you so much. That keeps our lights on, as I keep on repeating. With Disney, intro of Thrawn, Ahsoka, likely Ezra, etc., seems they're setting up for a timeline break where events will seemingly lead to bad Luke, but then a drastic turn and character salvation. Well, we don't know what they're planning, and we have rumors, and but yeah, here's like the thing. I think it's going to be difficult for them to do anything drastic as long as the Kennedy faction is there.
Yeah.
But I think if it was up to the Favreau faction, they're going to do a very clean break to consign the sequel trilogy to a parallel universe and then move on in a completely different direction. Like, we're hearing rumors of time jumps and everything, so it'll be interesting to see how things play out. Tom or Script, have you heard anything about that?
Script?
I haven't heard anything yet. All I would say is be cautiously optimistic. Consider the fact that they are probably going into the direction of the sequel trilogy until they aren't. So I mean, we're going to enjoy some of the. I think we're most likely going to enjoy some of the newer stuff that Favreau is going to be doing for the audience. Yeah. And I also suspect that until there is a regime change at Disney, it's going to be a very interesting tug of war between what Favreau wants to do and what I guess Kennedy and Bob Iger for the moment want to do. But I'd also stress that where was I going with that? Sorry. I'd also stress that until they have, if they're keeping it in the time frame that they're keeping it, they have a good 20 years of content they can produce before they even have to make that call to The Last Jedi.
Actually, that's a good point. And I think Dave Filoni has been wanting to bring into live action what he's been building animated for some time. And I think he really was under the tutelage of George Lucas. I think George has a genuine affection for him. I've been lucky enough to be able to go up to the ranch up there, Skywalker Ranch, and see what's going on. And he really is like a son. And I think that if Favreau can continue to play, the political game, he understands it. He knows how to build franchises. He did with Marvel, quietly behind the scenes. He's a passionate man. He can speak. I've seen him speak at the DGA, and he can speak about technology on one hand, then story on the next, then cooking or whatever. He has so many passions and things that he's bringing, but he genuinely loves Star Wars. And so you have a bunch of people right now who love Star Wars, like Filoni or even Taika, who's doing a Star Wars. All those guys get along. A friend of mine sent a picture from the set of all of them standing there doing it, and Peyton's directing, and you see John and George Lucas is there and everything. And you're like, wow, here's a bunch of people that really love what they're doing. They love Star Wars. They understand why it works. If you could leave them alone, you'd have something amazing. The question is whether it will be a tragedy that they don't get to do what they want, or if it will be an underdog story, ironically them being the underdogs within their own company, and build their own new universe, and the mistakes become a distant memory.
Yeah. And our good buddy Larry did the work for us. Thank you so much. We were both right, Tom. Cleopatra cost $44 million at the time, equal to $370 million today, and it finally broke even in 1973.
Oh,
there you go. It's
That's
video.
very good.
All the money it's made has been on television and video. There you go.
Yeah. There you go. And moving on from there, Mr. Another says, Tom, you're my kind of troll. Double
I know
thumbs
that,
up.
Mr. Another, because I know you, and you drive Steak nuts.
And then we had a $10 super chat from Stupid Deals. Thank you so much. And he says, give Favreau and Filoni a few years' time. And love the channel, guys. Been enjoying it for a couple of months now. Oh, well, thank you. I'm so glad that you found us and that you're enjoying the content. We really appreciate everyone following us. We really appreciate the community.
Before you get to the next super chat, we got an update from our good friend PJ Orbital Nation. Says, reminder to all, our friend Alan Dean Foster has yet to resolve his issue with Disney. What would Uncle Walt say to this? Yeah, this is something that we kept bringing up when we were talking about the whole thing. Is like, this is something Disney could fix easily in 10 seconds. And not only that, they could make themselves look like the biggest good guys in this by going, look, here's $500,000. This takes care of all past
medical
residuals, all future residuals, and it'll not only write him out of the problem, it'll make them look good in the process. It'll take care of him. Sure, it's probably more than he's owed, but at this point, with the bad fucking press they've gotten out of this,
and he's sick. I think both he and his wife are sick right now. It would just be good mojo to take care of it. There's a line in that Scrooge thing I did. I was thinking about businesses and corporations as I was writing this parody of the Scrooge story, and there's a line in it that I wrote which was, if you treated your employees like assets instead of liabilities, we'd all be a lot better off. And this is yet another case where this man, out of his art and his passion, made them a lot of money, and they're acting like somehow he's a liability to want to participate in all the money that's generated. But without people like him, there isn't anything for Disney to sell. There aren't books to sell without good authors.
Exactly, and he's a very, very good author.
Yeah.
So Disney are really cheap there. And everyone, again, if you haven't seen it, go check out our full interview with Alan Dean Foster. You won't regret it.
Yeah.
And with that, we have a few more super chats to get through. Sent us a diamond super sticker, so thanks for that. And Gojira Star 5477 pointed out what you have pointed out as well. Odd. First, they complain because men don't show their emotions. One shows their emotions while watching Mando, and they make fun of him. Oh, right. The irony. Yeah, right indeed.
Men can't win at this point. It's ridiculous in the world. It's like, let us be men.
Yeah. And Atlas Information says for 20 Canadian dollars, thank you so much. Star Wars is a war for the souls of fans. Dark side divides and conquers fans. Why there are two camps at Lucasfilms. So fans miss the middle way, hidden in symbol and allegory in the myth. How evil undermines all mythic truth. Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, well said.
And SSJ3 Jack Bauer says for $9.99, like Andre, I don't have a strong connection with Star Wars from my childhood, but even I got emotional at the scene of a father, Mando, saying goodbye to his child. Pedro Pascal nailed that scene. Yeah, he sure did. He absolutely did.
I agree. And maybe that is the deeper resonance. If you've had a pet you love, or a child that you know is moving on to something else, even if you don't have kids, you've had something that you've cared about where the time comes to let it go. And if you've gotten attached to it, it's a human thing to feel that I need to let this go. Obviously, if I love it, you let it go and grow. But selfishly, you want it. You want to keep it in your life. You want to keep this person in your life or your pet. If your pet's in pain and you want to let it go, it's a hard decision to go, I love this thing, but I need to put that ahead of my own need. And they nailed it. I think, when Peyton was directing it, I think he made it not just about, the Mandalorian letting that character go, but it was about everyone who's ever had to say goodbye to something that you fought so hard to have in your life, only to realize you were fighting to have it in your life to let it go.
Indeed, yeah, it was good on so many levels. I get that many people don't think it was good enough or will never come back, and that's fair and fine. But I think it was really good in its own right, just for that.
Yeah.
And I also think it was genius to let him keep the mask on for most of the time, or the helmet on for most of the time.
Yes.
Because that way you can project yourself into him.
Yes, you become him.
And that is something that, as you say, anyone who is a father, anyone who has had a pet or otherwise has had responsibility for someone who couldn't take care of themselves.
Correct.
Will be able to.
Yeah, letting go of them is loving. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to do. You know, there'll come a day when my son doesn't want to play and do stuff with me. He's going to go off to college. He's going to take off. I wouldn't be a person if I
Cats
didn't.
in the Cradle is going to make you bawl every
exactly.
time you hear.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. You know, it's like I want to feel alive. It's like we were joking about, Norwegians half dead inside, but the other half is still feeling things, and you're alive.
But you just have to reconcile the aspect that if they want to go off and they feel confident doing so, that you did your job as a parent.
Yes, good
Even
point.
the Ugly Kid Joe version, you're gonna be sitting there and be like, "Fuck you, Ugly Kid Joe."
Yeah, exactly. I'm not crying. You're crying.
My eyeballs are sweating.
Yeah, no, and that's okay. My God, why, why is that a symbol of weakness? That's just insane.
No, I know, it's ridiculous.
It's brave to cry when it's something that's truly emotional. When it's something that's petty and you cry, that's when you're weak.
Yeah, exactly. And that, and when we're talking about attachment or being a parent or having a pet or something like that, it's like, of course we feel that stuff. That's the whole point of life, And if you can feel that in a half-hour science fiction show, more power to you, man. You made somebody feel something.
Well, and to be fair, I guess what Pablo was really doing was trying to say, oh, he's just using it. He's being a grifter, what have you. I don't really see it that way. I mean,
he's not that good an actor. I think really
even
tried.
beyond that. I mean, why is it that if he really is a fan, does he not have the right to express himself in any way he feels fit about said thing? I mean, there was a lot of fans who cried at all of the trailers for Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. I didn't make fun of them. In fact, I remember we were talking about on one of the shows, I don't know if you were part of the program yet, Script, but there was that one famous guy who cried at the one trailer and everybody was just picking on him. And it was just like, what? Why? Let him.
Yeah, I've seen memes of that. Yeah, why would anyone want to pick on that guy?
It makes no sense. It's like you take a girl to a movie and she bawls at the end of the movie and you turn to her and go, "What's wrong with you, you idiot? Why are you crying?" It's like, you're not getting any that night. It's like let them feel something. Let them enjoy it.
You cry though, you're definitely getting some that night.
Unless it's beaches. If you're a man and you're crying at beaches.
Exactly. You got to pick your right times though. They're not going to give a shit. Yeah, they're not going to give a shit if you're crying at the end of King Kong, but now if you're crying at the end of Beaches, like Script says, or Yeller, they'll just be like, it's a dog.
Yeah, I feel you. I cried during Master and Commander.
Balboa because that's a heartwarming movie.
Yeah, and I think we had a list started the other day, didn't we? Script.
I think we did. Yeah, we started a list. What are great movies to cry to?
That would be a great list. Great movies for men to cry to.
Yeah.
I love that. We should do that, a giant list of movies that it's okay for a dude to cry to.
Top 10 movies men are allowed to cry to.
I love that.
What
else was there, Script? I can't remember the other ones.
Oh my God, that's a great idea.
We're gonna save it. Let's save it for the video. We can think about it.
I think that's terrific.
We'll have to sit down and vote them out. Yeah,
that's a wonderful idea.
Is there even 10 movies that
Man's Guide of Movies to Cry to?
We had to stretch, so we threw in Blazing Saddles in here.
That's tears of laughter.
That's wonderful.
That is a. We'll do that.
Rocky 3. That was one of the other ones. Thank you, Jack Murphy. Yes, that was the other one that said, "Yeah, you're allowed."
You're allowed to cry
when Mickey dies. Yes,
that's great. When Mickey dies, you can keep your man card. Yeah. I love it.
And Frank, moving on from there, Frank Harris says, "I have a feeling Kathleen wants Luke under the cut, and at some point, someone from Kathleen's camp will tear down the character again."
Yeah.
What I heard is that they tried already. That Kathleen Kennedy actually had planned a series that was going to fundamentally changed the entire original trilogy, but Favreau stopped it.
Thank God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what her animus is towards it. I don't know why the focus is destroying it, other than, I mean, is it because it's like white males, white street? I don't understand.
Yeah, the methodology is very foreign. It's
I
alien.
don't get it.
I don't get it. Yeah.
It's the entire reason she's there is the success of that original trilogy. She worked literally for the men involved in all the popular entertainment from that time, from Lucas to Spielberg. It just doesn't make any sense.
And
Yeah,
maybe
she
that
worked for
made
the
her
men
bitter.
that changed the industry, and now she's trying to change it herself, and it's very weird.
It is.
Yeah.
You would think she would be promoting it, or at least go, you know what? I fundamentally learned this. Now I'm going to put my own spin on it, but in a positive direction. I just don't understand it.
Yeah. And Rich Sutty says, failing upwards, like Alex Kurtzman. Anyway,
Yeah.
good evening,
Yeah.
chaps. Yeah.
Failing
And,
upwards. That's Hollywood's right there. Failing
Yeah.
upwards.
You know, it's
And,
funny, Tom, because you're one of the few people that actually works in the industry who hasn't stuck up for Billy's doctor. It's funny because, like, after the process, it's always like, you know, they'll always say something about him, or somebody will mention him, and they're like, "Oh, he's such a nice guy, and he works so hard." And
That's not me.
does he work so
Yeah,
hard to
just-
get that nose brown? I don't know.
They're hoping they'll get hired.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
And,
usually say it after the fact too, which is weird. Like, yeah, off camera or not off or off recording or live. Yeah,
He's not taking my calls, and I'm frankly not worried about it. I'm old and crusty enough that I don't care.
You kidding? I meet him, I might end up going to jail afterwards, so I'm not.
Probably better that you're in Canada. So.
Yeah.
That's probably why they won't hire Star Trek fans anymore. Not because they're worried about him having an opinion. Probably more worried about him causing bodily harm to Alex.
And moving on from there, Mihan sent us another 50 Swedish krona, thanks so much, saying, Callahan wasn't bad enough to come back for Doom Annihilation, but good enough for Mortal Kombat. Something don't add up. Feel more dead inside, like a good fellow Scandinavian. So.
Yep, that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. And Answer Mills, I don't know if I'm Fat Man or not, but I do understand him.
Yeah,
And
you understand. You may not approve of everything he did, but you understand it.
Actually, he didn't do nothing wrong, really. He was kind of grumpy Santa in the beginning, but yeah.
And Taker610 says, easy to work in Hollywood when your name is Pine. So yeah, good one.
That's right.
And Speculative Future says, why do I not hear you guys ever talk about The Expanse, quality wall to wall? Well, that's because I haven't seen it yet, but we're going to start seeing it really, really soon because we have a lot of catching up to do. And, what was that?
So what's this wee stuff? You got a Mickey Mouse in your pocket?
No, you didn't get the memo yet. So, yeah.
No. That's the reason why I haven't watched it yet either. Is just we haven't worked it into our schedule yet.
Yeah, that's like stuff. That's stuff like that. Good stuff that also needs to be scheduled. But now, when the Mandalorian is finished, then we need something else good to review. And soon, thank God, we'll be done with Star Trek Discovery as well. Yeah. And then we have room to actually watch and review. So I actually look forward to doing that. I hope it's as good as everyone keeps saying it is.
Yeah, I hope it's as good as the books. I'm a fan of it's James S.A. Corey, I think, is the author, and he built a very expansive universe in it, and it looks really interesting. So I want to do a deep dive. Aren't they? They're up to 5 seasons now, I think.
Yeah, season 5 just is currently airing, and it's not complete because they did the They did the first 3 drop, and then they're doing weekly, which is to sort of generate more interest into the show, which is a smart move. Yeah. And then I think 6 seasons the last because there's a time jump in the book series. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they're going to continue later or they're just going to put a temporary hiatus, kind of like how The Sopranos went on hiatus in order to get their final season just right and whatnot. So who knows at that point?
Yeah. It's nice to see some ambitious world building and storytelling. I'll definitely want to check it out.
Yeah, well, you're welcome to join us for
Yeah.
all our Expanse reviews when we get to that.
I'd love to.
And then Orville Nation says clean house at Disney Lucasfilm already. Yeah, absolutely. And ActionCom says, would Patty benefit from having an asset director like Spielberg had with Michael Moore? Refer to the truck scene in Raiders.
Oh yeah, like an assistant, almost a second unit director for action. That can elevate as well. Like getting a really good second unit person makes all the difference when you're doing action scenes and things. I think she stages it pretty well. I don't know who her second unit director is, if she has a go-to person, but yeah, it can make all the difference. Sometimes Absolutely. If you wanted great action, you used to hire Chad, the guy who did John Wick, was a second unit director, and if you wanted amazing action, you would just say, Chad, go crazy, and he would elevate it to the next level.
That's what they did in the Marvel movies.
That's right. They find terrific assistant directors who would create a fighting style and a choreography.
They used him, the John Wick guys. They were the ones that did the action scenes in, for instance, Captain America: Civil War.
Civil War, yeah. The whole shield fight scene in the on the stairs and in the elevator, all that was designed by those guys working with the director. And you know what? It's just smart to do that. Everyone should look for experts in their field and incorporate them.
Yeah.
It is a collaborative work, and it also gives you another set of eyes, because one thing I noticed, especially in that opening scene of Wonder Woman, is that it's shot well, but the wire work is incredibly telegraphing.
Yeah.
Like there doesn't feel to be any gravity with these Amazons as they're doing their leaps and runs and whatnot. It's because they're being yanked around on wires, and you can tell that they're very rigid. And that's the other part too, is that I don't know what it is with some stunt directors when they get a hand of female actors doing action stuff, the actors feel like they're stiff as a board. They don't feel like they're fluid or natural with their combat in most cases.
Yeah,
it's only like Michelle Yeoh is the only one who does feel fluid because she's been doing it for 40 years.
Yeah, she's
same
a triple
with Ming-Na Wen.
Yeah, you're
but
right.
Like when you get someone like, say, Catherine McNamara, who is trying to be an action star in television, I just don't believe it ever. Not just for her styles, but just for the fact that she's very contained, so to speak. She's not fluid.
The fluidity.
And others in the same boat. It's just like you got to get the right stunt guy in there to sort of like loosen them up so that they can be convincing in these set pieces.
That's a very good point. I think creating fluidity, the fight scenes are dances, and creating that fluidity is so important when you have stunt coordinators and first unit directors that understand how to do it, and it's part of the storytelling. It does take your script to the next level, and a confident director brings that person in and says, hey, this is sort of how I see it in my vision, but can we take it to the next level? Can you work with them, because you're telling the story with your bodies and you're telling it through the choreography? But yeah, gravity and the physics of a fight are everything. And when you get into that wire fu area, if it isn't someone who really knows how to do wire work, it destroys the reality.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
And moving on from there, we have Christian Coralejo, who says, along with good writing, what kind of things would you guys want to see in a science fiction and a fantasy movie, respectively? Mr. Konkle, let's begin with you. In addition to good writing, assuming that's in place, what do you want to see in science fiction and fantasy, respectively?
I think there's two things that are absolutely key. First is always casting, because when you're dealing with science fiction or fantasy, the onus is on the actor to make you believe in the world that they've built around it. And they have to have a kind of effortless quality. One of the reasons everybody loves Star Wars is Harrison Ford was completely believable as this guy in a used future who kind of was above it all and cracking, jokes about things and doing it. But you believed him. You could look at him and you're like, that guy does that. There's no question. A good actor reacts and incorporates a universe that you're creating. So I would say casting I would like to see, and then beyond that is production design, because what you want is something that doesn't feel derivative but feels inevitable. You look at it and it becomes iconic. The look of a film is everything when you're world building fantasy, you're world building. Look at the consistency of the design in the original Lord of the Rings films. Everything feels like it was organically developed from within each culture. The elven culture, the way the swords are, the way the costumes are, the way they dress, all of those things work psychologically to make you enjoy it. Even James Cameron does this really well. You believe that one company made all the guns, made all the ships, made all the costumes, all the things that people are wearing. It looks like it came from one tech, and then an alien tech, like a biomechanical tech. You believe the aliens look like that. And for me, when I'm approaching something, I have a pitch deck. I'll have 10 pages of simply production design and find industrial artists, or you'll find some up and coming artist who has a unique vision, and that's what you're pitching. You're pitching the world and the cast. So beyond telling a good story, you have to have two very important things, which is the look and also who's selling it. Because without a good actor, it doesn't matter how much production design you have. But if you put a good actor in there and a world that you've built that is both believable and fantastic, you've got a great project. And those things are not easy to quantify. But when they come together, they're all the movies that we've been talking about our whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just got to put some rubber monsters and boobs in there and I'll be happy.
Yeah, all right. That's production design right there.
Don't forget karate.
And yeah, I was about to say, and I can answer on behalf of Rob some karate. Script, how about
karate
you?
and boobs.
Well, to piggyback off of what Tom said, I would also say, show me something new. That's the other part too. Like there are so many science fiction stories I see newer writers doing or other amateur filmmakers doing, where it's like great production value and cool special effects, but I'm not seeing anything new. And I think there needs to be a little bit of bravery with regards to just show me something that you haven't seen, and maybe that someone else hasn't seen, because that's how we got Star Trek and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and all those things, is that these are worlds that are familiar but are brand new. And I think that's really important. I mean, as a fan, you always kind of want to draw from the things that inspired you, and sometimes there's a little risk to that, where you end up repeating the things that you love as opposed to exploring something new about that aspect. And that's what I would encourage anyone is try and show something really new that's easy to grasp. And it's the hardest formula to nail, because again, it's incredibly abstract and it's really difficult. But if you can find something that is like a new idea or a new take on an idea, and really hit it well with your production design, your aesthetic, your cast, and a well-written story that's personal, you'll do well. And I also strongly recommend this axiom to help you: simple plot, complex characters. A complex character will engage an audience, and a simple plot will keep them on track so they know how to follow the story as it progresses. The moment you try to invert that, where you make it simple characters and complex plot, that's when you get into something like The Last Jedi territory. And it's right. You end up just driving away the people you want to enjoy your work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to be all serious, like the things I like in sci-fi and fantasy are just, the classic things that always make them, memorable, great endings. Like we were talking about production design, inspired ideas, maybe something we've never seen before in a new kind of way. Because those are all the sci-fi films we always have gravitated towards. Planet of the Apes, 2001, Star Wars, Star Trek. All these things. What's unique about them? Well, it's that they're unique, and one isn't like the other. I mean, yeah, you could even make argument that Star Wars is kind of readopting Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, but at the same time, it did something new that we hadn't seen in movies before, and that was a lived-in universe.
Yeah, and it used mythology. What is it? Originality is the art of concealing your sources.
Yeah, and it took a lot of tropes and turned them on their heads and stuff. And that's, of course, what I love about Tarantino and stuff, too. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's
And
not fantasy, but it's the same reasons. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as for me, just to answer this and move on to the next one, for science fiction, I would say incorporate some actual science into it. I love that when a movie has some science and is built around a very real concept, however theoretical. Then tell me about it. Teach me something cool I didn't know before, and build a story around that. That's what I want out of good science fiction. As for fantasy, as what some of you have alluded to already, give me a lived-in world. Make me be able to immerse myself into the world. I don't want to see a set. I want to see Middle Earth. I want to see the Hyborian Age. Stuff like that. Make me immerse myself in the world. Those are like my requests for science fiction and fantasy, respectively. Moving on from that, 200 Watt Studio says, because of Century City, we have Conquest of Planet of the Apes.
That's right. Didn't they film some of the scenes in Century City because it was so modern?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, see, there's a silver lining right there.
There you go. And then there was an older super chat that I had to dig to find. It was difficult to find, but I got it right here. Bogue says for 50 Mexican pesos, I believe it is, bosses in charge don't care because the agenda will get them into real power. The oligarchy has a timetable, 2030. The peasants will own nothing. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this channel, but
heavy stuff.
You can heavy stuff, and you can read about that elsewhere. And then we're getting into emotions. Taker610 says, can't have an emotional reaction to Luke when no one on screen does. You reacted to Han and Leia in The Force Awakens because you know the relationship is there. While Fat Steven Seagal beat up Hidalgo, I guess, although I can't see it here on my screen.
After today.
Yeah. I cry every time in the closet eating cheesecake.
We know. We know.
Yeah. And Master Clockwork says, it is okay to cry when the dog dies in the 2007 I Am Legend. Not exactly a good movie, but by God, that scene was heart-reaching. I think it was. I think.
Well, the director's cut or whatever you call it is much better than the theatrical version. But Mihan says we missed one of his super chats in the beginning. I know we got a few from him, but yeah, double check.
I'll check afterwards after this one. Swinging Cod says it is acceptable to shed a couple of tears when Robert Duvall dies in Lonesome Dove.
Okay.
And then I shall look for Mihon's super chat. So just to move us on to the next thing, Tom, in the meantime, while I keep on looking.
Well, that was pretty much the main news. I was trying to think, was there anything else I sent you today to discuss? I don't think there really was. It's been, of course, with the holiday weekend, a lot of things are slow except for the whole HBO Max Wonder Woman thing. Outside of the Alan Dean Foster news, which we've been on top of as well. We do have a new video coming up soon. I'm not quite sure when you're planning on dropping that yet today, but it will be.
We have a new video in a few hours. Then we have a new Star Wars video for you all. So look forward to that.
Yes.
Mihon, he said, I think we got this one. Send Tom the Troll to deal with Pablo.
Yeah.
You will rip Pablo when you hold the fought out the door from Disney.
Yeah, we got that.
We got that one. Okay, yeah. Then I'm looking further back here. And then he saw Star Wars at the Age of 5. Got that one. Okay. I think we got them all, but I'm going through here.
Maybe you just missed it, Mihan. If not, sorry about that. We're not.
If we missed it, then just send the text right away.
Yeah.
Oh no, here we go.
Here it is. Never mind.
Yeah.
Mihon,
he said, and this one I might have missed. Barbed Wire plus Batman and Robin equals Wonder Woman 84.
Yes,
thanks for Kazoo.
Oh, that was
yesterday.
The other days. Was it yesterday or the day before? Yeah.
Yeah, it was from.
Now we're back here there. Well, then I don't think that we missed anything.
Yeah.
Today.
So we did just at me, Mihan. You don't have to send another super chat. Just
we'll
we'll catch it.
Yeah, so then we'll put up what you felt missing on screen again. But I think we got everything. And Bogue says, how long before Hollywood adapts Korean webtoons?
Never know. But not to jump off that question, but somebody asked earlier as we were talking about the whole like, classic Hollywood being overbloated films with like Cleopatra and stuff. The question was, will things, turn around again like they did back then? I don't know, because Hollywood is a lot more full of gatekeepers now than it used to be. And instead of expanding with more smaller production companies, everything's getting soaked up. We have less and less outlets now than we used to. So I have a feeling that A, you have studios that are going to take a lot less chances.
Mm-hmm.
And B, it just seems like they have never really opened the doors to those who have been really good with like fan films and other things like that. Now, as far as like webtoons and anime, I'm not so sure Hollywood's really ready to get into that kind of stuff yet, but you never know. You never know, especially with more and more influence from that area starts to, come into the films and television we do watch. It's hard to say. What do you guys think about that, Tom? Script?
I think you're right. There are more choices at the end user level to find things, but they're owned by less and less people. I think, we used this example earlier. It's like if Disney doesn't want something, then it doesn't end up on Hulu. It doesn't end up on Disney Plus. So you have all these different, by name different places, but ultimately they're all owned by the same one or two companies. And that is not good for business or good for artists. The more it all comes under one tent, one aesthetic, the less real choice you have, and the more just variety of branding you have. It's like, ABC is owned by Disney. So if your show is rejected by Disney, that's 5 places you can't take it.
Yeah, there you go. And and as for me, I don't think that they're going to. I don't know that that's something that Hollywood is going to be adapt. That if anything, that's going to be an indie thing for fans to adapt. That's my thoughts, at least, on that. I could be wrong. Script.
Yeah, it all depends on if they see there's money there. That's the other part too. They have to money is going to drive Hollywood always. There may be an agenda aspect to some of the studios that have a lot of ability to spend for a while, but eventually, since we know over the last 5 to 6 years that type of policy doesn't really generate much profit, eventually the money is going to become king again. Yeah. And while things are kind of getting consolidated, which is something I'm apprehensive about because I don't like the idea of having fewer options to sell something, especially with the streaming services right now. I mean, it's turning into those exclusive cable packages that we dealt with in the late 80s and early 90s, where you're basically spending, it's not really a la carte as much. You're buying a whole package with a slew of different channels, and you realize, oh, I'm just kind of repeating the same thing, only now it's internet and computer dominated as opposed to cable and satellite dominated. And I think that the future of the entertainment industry is going to come in the same way that Hollywood generated when people left New York to do their own thing. I think there's going to be other industries, other people who are talented and skillful and business savvy that are going to start their own thing. And over the decades, it's going to generate a competitive market. And I think it'll just be another resurgence. It won't be, and that will happen if Hollywood doesn't change. And it took, I think, what was it, the 70s when New York was able to actually come back and be a little competitive on things that Hollywood was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I have an indie film company, and my whole business plan is finding a direct route to people and get rid of a lot of the middleman approach, and providing hopefully some entertaining stuff directly to people using technology to deliver it. And you have a lot less layers and gatekeepers you have to go through if you have your fan base and people discover you and they're like, hey, I like what you're doing. There's never been a better time to be able to directly deliver independent productions or anything directly to the people that want to see it. So Hollywood needs to pay attention.
There you go. Yeah. And Greg Teasdale has any further news on new Ghostbusters? Did Bill Murray turn up on the set? Yep.
He did.
Yeah. Finally.
Yeah, he finally did.
Yeah, and Adam Wofford says, tomorrow Hollywood will adapt Korean webtoons. Also, Andre, make an audible of The Nameless City by H.P. Lovecraft. I think your voice would bring chills to the story. Well, we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I have loads of catching up to do for our Patreon, so I'll get on that first.
The super chat, but no worries. I gladly listen, cry, rant. Okay, yeah, sorry we didn't see it.
I can't find it. It might have gone through, but yeah, thanks anyway. As long as you enjoy the content, we'll be sure to catch the next one and all the others.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
And Carl Holdridge says, Luke was us. We were Luke. We can all envision ourselves as the hero. If Disney destroys our hero, Disney is destroying us.
Well, that's a very valid point.
Actually, well said. That's good. Yeah. Every good hero you see yourself in and you aspire to. And yeah, that's great. That's a great analogy.
Well, not only that, I mean, I think the biggest thing that they don't understand is that they turned a very selfless hero into a selfish prick.
Yeah. Completely misunderstood the character.
Yeah.
And that's been an ongoing issue.
Willfully, yeah.
Yeah, willfully. Yeah. And that's been a thing that's been occurring for over the past 20 years. Name me a new character introduced in the last 20 years that is a role model character.
Yeah, you're right. There's very few.
Yeah. And they're not celebrated.
Yeah, I call it's like too much grimdark and too much deconstruction. There's not many characters where you want to follow along, which I think is where the hunger for a lot of the older things come from, where people go, oh, good, and Indiana Jones is coming back or something like that. It's not that it's, something particularly new or original. It's that at least it's a character you can aspire to.
Yep.
Yeah, indeed.
And with that, I think we're caught up, right?
We are indeed caught up.
Well, with that, I want to say thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We had our biggest crowd ever today.
Terrific. That's great.
Thank you so very much for being here. We are planning on going live Wednesday, I believe, right, Andre?
Yes, we are. We will be back again on Wednesday, as usual, at 9 a.m. LA time, which translates to 6 p.m. Central European time and 5 p.m. London time. So everyone mark that in your calendar. We're always live at those times every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
And we have Anna, that Star Wars girl, scheduled as of right now. But if anything changes, we'll definitely let you guys know before then. We got Toxic Femininity tonight at 9 Central, 10 Eastern. So join the ladies and myself as we talk about all kinds of fun, newsy stuff. I'm sure this Pablo situation will come up then as well. So until then, take care, everybody.
Yeah. And before then, also Tom Konkle,
Absolutely,
if we look at you have quite a nice thumbnail there. The Haunting of Ebenezer Scrooge. Now the link for that, of course, is in the description of this video. But tell us briefly about what that is, and again, where people can find it. In addition to in our
absolutely. I come from a sketch comedy background, and I always wanted to do a kind of Monty Python style take on the Scrooge story. And someone reminded me that I had written a script for a television show that was considered it was too edgy and too crazy. So I took the beginning of it, which was a sort of Scrooge parody, and I thought, how could I really turn this into something fun? So I did The Haunting of Ebenezer Scrooge, or the Festivus Incident, as it's known, and turned it into, it's about something. It's about capitalism, it's about class differences, but it's a very silly take on the Scrooge story. And we did it live on Zoom with each character, a lot of people that used to be in a sketch group with me, performing a script that I wrote with Curtis Bedford. And I invite you to check it out. We actually have live carolers in the broadcast. We have sound effects, everything. So it's like a radio production you can watch that is a Monty Python take on Scrooge. So check it out. It's a little gift here at the end of the year, and hopefully it was a lot of fun to make and watch.
There you go. And also check out Script Doctor's channel. And I like Oridium, if that's how you say it. Couldn't Scrooge hire Ghostbusters? That's true. You know what's funny about that is Scrooged is the movie that Bill Murray finally did after his hiatus between Ghostbusters. And he didn't want to do Ghostbusters, but yet he decided to do a movie full of ghosts. Go figure on that one.
Go figure, yeah.
And of course, as Kalki, you got another one here?
Yeah.
I got one here. It says, as Kelky says, or Kelsey, I think that's Kelky. Let the alien hug you. Yes, it doesn't mean you no harm.
Exactly.
It's in its name, hugger, face hugger. It's
hugger.
Exactly. Yeah.
He gives out hugs.
And Darius Munchausen has subscribed to both Script Doctor and to you, Tom Konkle. So yeah, awesome. And thanks to them for joining the show.
It's my sarcasm. So.
And with that, Script Doctor, where can people find you?
They can find me on youtube.com/scriptdoctor, and as well as hanging out with you guys on Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark. I'm so grateful that you have invited me onto your shows. I love talking with you all and with your guests and seeing the great response in the chat. I'm also on Twitter at ScriptDoctorPhD. And you can also find me. So follow me there and find out where I'll be showing up and when some of my videos are dropping.
Yep. And Dr. Coffin Nails, I got your package the other day. So thank you so much for that. And we've gotten a few packages from you guys, including Natasha. So thank you so much for all the stuff you guys sent us for Christmas and all throughout the year. Sooner or later, we're going to do something to show all that stuff off here eventually when we can work that out. But again, until then, subscribe to these guys, subscribe to After Dark, subscribe to the live archive as well if you want to keep up with all the live shows and beyond. Take care, everybody, and take care of your friends, family, yourself.